all. Dig it.
All right, man, let's do this. You guys ready?
Yeah, fired up.
Hey, lead heads. We're back with another episode of the Talking Lead podcast. I am your host, Lefty, bringing you the leducation for 10 years now here on the Talking Lead podcast, leducating the uneducated. And we've got a great lineup of sponsors that have offered some discount codes to you lead heads. We give those out every episode and sometimes on social media and our YouTube videos. So make sure you're watching those to get the latest and greatest on those codes so you can save, because we got those holidays coming up. 'Tis the season to be jolly and spend your money on your buddies and your wives and your kids and your family. And we help you save money. Go to Mission First Tactical, use code LEADHEAD, you get 20% off. Seal1.com, use the code LEADHEAD to get 25% off. If you want an awesome Talking Lead logo t-shirt like I'm wearing, if you're not watching the video, you need to be watching it. You can go to 1776united.com, use the code Talking Lead. You're going to get 20% off any of your purchases there. And then we'll have some more throughout the show that we'll throw out. But make sure you go support all those that make this show possible each and every week for you lead heads, like Keltec, IWIUS, bringing you each and every month the AK Corner, our good buddies over at Century Arms. So go to their Instagrams, go to all their social medias, let them know how much you appreciate it so we can continue bringing you the leducation. So today, this episode, it's going to be a fun one. This is new for me. And as you lead heads know, when I get into something new, I bring you into it too, whether you like it or not. We're going to be talking archery today. I got into, and I've been telling you guys this for a while. I've been wanting to get into the archery hunting, bow hunting, and I did it. I have done it. I have entered the world, and that's thanks to our guest that we've got on today. I'm going to introduce our guest now. Joining me, and this is not his first time. You guys have met Brandon before. He's been on some episodes in the past. We've done some SHOT Show interviews together, and our good buddy, the Sheepdog Impact Assistance group over there, Sergeant Major Lance Nutt. He's been involved with some of the shows that we've done with him as well. Brandon Forquer joining us, who is now with Centerpoint Archery and the Velocity Group, the whole family there, and he's going to tell us all about their whole family of brands there. So, Brandon, welcome in.
Hey, man, glad to be on. Glad to get back on the show, and especially with this this subject matter, archery. I think is a great avenue for you to jump into, Lefty. So excited to see your foray into it for sure.
Well, it's about time. You know, it's taken me 52 years, and I finally made it. So,
hey, never too late. Never too late.
And as good buddies do, you know, we introduce each other to other good people and good folks that have similar beliefs and interests. And also joining us, we have Benjamin Cole, and Benjamin has a TV show that he has started. It's called Rooted. I believe I got it, Rooted Television.
That's right.
And, we're going to learn more about that this episode too. So you call you Benjamin or Ben?
Ben's fine.
Okay. Ben, welcome in.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. You know, that's one thing I love is being in the woods, and archery hunting is just kind of part of the gig. When you hunt during early season, it gives you more time, and, you know, we'll get into more of that later, but it also gives you a little bit more of an advantage on that. Well, you know what? I'm going to save that for later.
We'll talk about it. Yeah, there's going to be some talking points there.
Talk about that later. Thank you for having me.
Give away all the secrets in the opening, man.
Absolutely. And I mentioned that you've got a TV show that you are doing, and tell our lead heads a little bit more about your TV show, Rooted.
Yeah, so Rooted Television was a passion that I've had for a lot of years. Filming, video production, all of that has been something that I've always wanted to do and always known that I was supposed to do. So we travel around, we hunt deer, ducks, hogs, turkey, anything that's got a legal season, we'll chase it just about it.
Anything that tastes good, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Got to have those vittles in the oven, I'm telling you. And, you know, do a little bit of sharing the gospel on there, and that's the show. I mean, we're just showing people you know, what it's really like to be a hunter. And, you know, none of this, oh, well, you got to shoot a 190 to be cool. I'm more along the lines of just like to kill deer and eat them.
For the substance that it provides, the nutrition, and being able to provide for yourself and your family,
Yes.
rather than relying on supermarkets and the government to provide for you. It's more about providing for yourself and being more self-sufficient.
In fact, that's all we live off of is wild game. That is our meat of choice, is wild game.
Even though you could go out and you could buy the most expensive cuts of beef and whatever in the stores, this is how you choose to live, and that's very honorable.
Sure.
And then, like you said, you also bring in a little scripture to it too. So for our listeners, Ben is a very spiritual individual, and he brings that to his show as well. So another thing that maybe you're missing out of some of those other hunting shows that Ben's bringing to the table. You want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, yeah, that's what I do. I'm not a preacher. I'm not any of those things. I'm just like everybody else. I'll go in and I'll just read a verse and basically just tell you how it's affected my life. And, you know, because like I say, I'm not perfect. I'm just like everybody else. The only thing that separates me from anybody is Jesus, and that's it. It's nothing that I've done, nothing that I'll ever do, you know, other than that.
Well, that lovely mane of hair that you've got going there and the beard, it kind of separates us a little bit too. Brandon, you're back with us, and we're glad to have you back, and especially in the capacity, the role that you're serving now with Velocity Outdoor. And tell us a little bit about what's going on over there at Velocity.
Yeah, so Velocity, right, that's obviously the parent company. We've got several brands underneath that space. So right, we work primarily with archery and also with the air gun, air rifle segment. So we have crossbow guns, which probably most of us have heard of or grown up with if you're in the shooting space area. A lot of us, right, that 760 Pump Master might have been the first gun you were kicking around in the woods with as a kid, you know, and got you into it. And then we've also got the Benjamin air rifles, right, with the PCP, and that's kind of the premier offering when it comes to our air rifle segment in there. So really exciting stuff on that air gun side, and we'll get into those in future episodes. But then archery.
Definitely something I want to get into and get our lead heads more information on. So yeah, I'm excited about that. Hell yeah.
Yeah. There's so many cool and innovative things going on in that space with big bore, and now you can take air rifle hunting into pretty much any game pursuit you want to around the world. And then on the archery side, right, it's much the same thing. So obviously here today we're going to focus a lot on Centerpoint. That's I know what you had some experience with at the Wrath 430X, which is one of our most exciting bows, right? Newest bow in the line. Was Field and Stream and Outdoor Life's recommended editors bow of the year for 22. Their editor's choice, and basically in the value bow segment. And we'll talk about that and what that means, when we say value bow.
When you say value bow, it doesn't mean cheap at all. I mean, this is a very high quality bow, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah. That Ben?
I don't have one yet.
We might be.
Oh, look at shots across the bow. I love it. And then obviously we also have Raven in our portfolio, right? So Raven is our premier crossbow line in right, some of the best crossbows on the market, most innovative, right? We've got some of the fastest bows on the market, some of the most accurate bows. I mean, these are crossbows that can be, dead nuts accurate 100, 200 yards out. We're talking crossbows that are putting 500, feet a second velocity out consistently with a full grain bolt. Those are just those are impressive things for us. So
that's probably what Ben has. Ben's probably got the Raven, doesn't he?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. Yeah. he didn't lead in with that, right?
Yeah.
Hey, look,
very good.
I have a multitude of weapons in your arsenal.
That's right. You gotta have variety, right? Variety is the spice of life.
And
no doubt about it.
100%.
As we get into our conversation, we'll talk more about offerings that Velocity has, and we'll talk about, because Ben obviously has experience with some of the things, probably more of them than I do, and we'll talk about other brands too. We're not just going to talk about that, and or not one brand specific. We're here to talk about archery, and for me, I thought we would just keep it basic on this episode. Learn the basics. Learn the bolts versus arrows. Learn about all the different parts of the arrows, and then of course we'll break down some compound bows, crossbows. Our focus mainly is going to be crossbows today, because that's what I got the experience with, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So it's my show. That's what
Do what you want.
That's right. But before we do that, guys, we do this little segment. It's called the Planes and Trains, and we need to take care of some jackwagons, and we need to honor some heroes. So, Gunny, bring that train in.
Hoorah, Semper Fi, do or die, hold 'em high at 8th and I. It is time for the Talking Lead Jackwagon of the Week, so brace yourself, baby.
So the train has stationed, and we've got some jackwagons that we want to take care of, and hopefully we got some heroes that we need to honor. So I'll kick it off, and I'll do some jackwagons here. So as you guys have heard me talk about in the past, Tia, she's in the movie industry, film and TV, which Ben is in also. And I had my first on-set, I guess, experience this week, where I had the opportunity to help out on this new TV show that's being filmed in this area. I can't tell you what it is or what it's about because of the NDA, and all that, but it was pretty fun. But you guys know how I feel about COVID and, the shots and, the vaccinations and all that. Well, on these movie sets and TV sets, and I don't know how it is, when you guys do it, Ben, because I guess you're pretty much the production. You guys take care of all your own stuff. But when you get with these California, these big Hollywood types, they're still requiring the test, at least right now. I've not been vaccinated, and they didn't ask me, so I didn't tell. And all they did the testing. But the fact that they're still testing, and that they're requiring people to still wear masks on set, because the mask has pretty much gone away, is ridiculous. I think that deserves a jackwagon call out for the Hollywood types and sets and studios that are still doing that. Probably them calling me back on set, huh? Actually, hold on. This is Tia, because this is set. Hello, I'm recording. Is it emergency? Hello? Freaking butt dial.
That's top shelf edit out right there.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna leave this in.
Yeah, I would definitely leave that in. But as far as what our protocol is on COVID, is if you wear a mask on my set, I'm going to ask you what's wrong.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I got no problem. People voluntarily want to wear them. That's fine. But making it mandatory, again, never agreed with that in the beginning.
Nope.
But they're still doing that. And these people, this is their jobs and their income, and this is how they provide for their families. And a lot of them feel like, if I don't do it, then what else am I going to do? I'm going to lose my job. I'm not going to be able to provide, pay my bills. So that's why a lot of these people have gotten the vaccinations and the shots against their will. I mean, really, it's against their will. They've been forced to do this.
Yep.
And the fact that they're still doing that to this day, because it's pretty much gone away everywhere. Even in the liberalist of liberal areas.
Well, the thing about a mask is, if you have a beard, let's be honest, it's not going to seal properly. If you want people to wear a mask, then everybody needs to shave their face, and everybody needs to be properly fitted for a mask. If you want to go.
I guess, but again, the masks, it's already been proven they don't work.
Yeah, no,
and they cause more harm than they do good.
Absolutely.
So that's my jackwagon. Again, we try not to get too political on this, but I just kind of wanted to point that out and let you guys know that it's, and I think it's got a lot to do, Ben, with the fact that a lot of jobs were created when COVID came up. So a lot of these people, these COVID compliance departments didn't even exist on set prior to this. And there was probably a crew of 10 people just on this, and it's a smaller kind of production, just for that one production. So think of all the money that they're paying these people and all the equipment and all the testing and, all that they're having to flood into it. And these people, they didn't have jobs prior to that, and I hate it that if it goes away, they're going to lose their jobs, but it's a job that doesn't need to exist. And they're fighting tooth and nail. Listen to these people on set talk about, how it's bad and it's coming back and it's not going away. And it's bullshit. So.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's pestilence is what it is.
There you go. Yeah. Feel free to make Bible references as we go, because I'm not proficient on those.
Oh, no, definitely pestilence, for sure. Yeah, I don't go by the way of the world by any means. In fact, I'd rather just live out in the woods by myself with nobody around.
Amen. Same here.
I think a lot of people are going to start doubting that here soon.
I'm banking on that $425 million lottery.
Hey.
Just carve us out about 100 acres when that hits.
Oh, you guys will be there definitely. It'll be like 1 million acres, something that I get. And
good.
All my buddies, all the lead heads will be invited out, definitely.
All right, that'd be awesome.
But yeah, I just kind of wanted to get that off my chest. That's my most recent and last couple of days. That's kind of what I've been doing. It was fun. I enjoyed it, and everybody on set was cool, and nothing against the COVID people whatsoever. Everybody was super nice people, and the whole production and everything. So if you're listening, I wasn't down talking to you, just the policy. And I know it's, they can't do anything about it. So.
Yeah, it's not the person, it's just their job. It's like a game warden.
Yeah.
They're
Oh, that's another thing. I'm glad you brought that up. The game warden. Did you hear about the TWRA, the suit against them and the Camden guy, the hunter?
I did not.
So they had surveillance cameras on this guy's property.
Really?
So they just came on and put surveillance cameras, and they were surveilling his property, and they gang rushed him one day when he was out on his property hunting, and they were trying to hit him up with all these charges of baiting and all kinds of other stuff. Yeah. And he was like, why do you have cameras on my property? Did you have a warrant? Do you have a warrant to do this, to come on my property and do all this? And so a year later, the lawsuit, and they determined that no, TWRA does not have the right to come on your property without a warrant anymore, because before they could just come on your property and do whatever. But no, there's a new ruling now. So hero-wise, that's my hero, is the guy in Camden that sued the TWRA and won, and now it is they can't just come willy-nilly on your property. And you think that when you buy your property, it's your property, it's private property, and that they can't come on your property anyway. But federally, there's a statute or something in there. I was reading this, that outside of your immediate domain, your castle, what they call your castle, anything outside of that, they can come without a warrant. They can come on your property. But Tennessee state law, there's a law, and that's what saved this guy in Camden, is there's a Tennessee state law that says they can't do that. So I'm not a lawyer or an attorney, but
yeah, me either.
Good to know. So.
Yeah. But I will say that not all game wardens are like that. I know several of them that are really good folks too, and they genuinely want to help. They really do want to help and be nice guys. They just run into a lot of jacklegs sometimes. And I get that.
They do. And I was out last year hunting, and I've got private property, and it's fenced and gated and locked. Mm-hmm. And when I come and go, the gate's locked. And so, and when I pull in the mornings to do the morning hunts, I don't pull in as far, but I do pull in the gate and lock the gate back. Well, when I got back from my morning hunt, and later that afternoon, there was a business card tucked in my window, and it was a TWRA agent's card. And I'm like, what the hell? This is, you had to jump the fence, walk up, at least 200 yards.
Yeah.
So I called him and I was like, "Hey, dude, got your card here. Is there something I can help you with?" And we've got private property posted, no trespassing signs and, all that up everywhere. And he's like, and I told him who I was. And I said, "I know you know who I am because you probably ran the license plate." So I said, "I'm the owner of this property and blah, 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 blah." He's like, "Oh, no, I just wanted to let you know. I saw the car there. Just wanted to make sure there was no trouble or, somebody might be injured or having problems." And I was like, "It's private property. I'm inside a locked gate.
Yeah.
It's hunting season." So it was his way of saying, "I'm watching you," kind of deal. I mean, he was nice about it and everything, but I never heard anything else from him.
That's good.
Yeah.
Crazy. Speaking of that, I'll kind of throw out my Jackwagon. It might tie off that and tie to our archery.
Yeah.
Talking about crossbows, right? So we have one state left in the U.S., the good old state of Oregon, that has crossbows as fully illegal, right? So you can use your crossbows, and there's regulations, right? Certain states have limited seasons or limited individuals who can use them, but Oregon's kind of the last holdout in the U.S. as a state that will not allow crossbows for hunting purposes. So that's kind of my one right there. It's like I want to, talk to the leadheads out there in the great state of Oregon and tell them, "Hey, man, call your representative and get them to open that up."
No, absolutely. And what would be the reason why? I mean, I can maybe see it 20, 30 years ago, maybe, 30 years ago, maybe. Why? Because maybe the technology and the power wasn't there with the crossbows. But with today's technology,
I don't know. I don't have a deep understanding of why Oregon's, kind of the last holdout. I mean, the little bit that I've seen and been informed about, and maybe some of your viewers might know better than even myself, but
Sure.
It sounds like they're trying to keep their hunting space traditional, just do traditional archery and then traditional firearms and kind of just have those seasons. And for whatever reason, they see crossbows is kind of messing that up a little bit. And so they've just been hard cut on that. So, don't know. But
well,
that's one that I think we need to push them to get beyond that.
Absolutely. Yeah. If we've got any Oregon listeners, email me, talkinglead@gmail.com, and let me know if, like crossbow hunting, or if you're a compound bow hunter, even. Let's talk and see what we can do maybe to get the ball rolling and getting you guys into the crossbows. That'd be awesome. And the same goes with any of you other lead heads that are listening. If you are hunters, you're crossbow hunters, or if you just have a crossbow, shoot me an email, let me know. I'd be curious as to, if it's just recreational, if you're into competition, or even fishing, people can fish with crossbows now too. So I don't know how that translates state to state, but that could be different.
Yeah, and that's the thing is there's, there are a lot of regulations out there, I think, in relation to crossbows. Again, like we said, certain states have limited seasons or certain times of the year, or they require that it parallels the firearm season. So, definitely for your listeners out there, when it comes to the crossbow space, before you just jump right in, find out, make sure what you want to do, what game you're pursuing, and then, check your local state and even county. Some states, break it down. Certain counties will have regulations where the state might allow it, but a certain county doesn't. I know I'm here in Texas, and we've got 4 counties around myself that do not allow crossbows, during their deer season. So just got to be mindful of it.
Well, see, and that's ridiculous too. That's ludicrous.
Yeah, well, and again, don't know exactly why, certain places are choosing that, but that's where they're at. Well, and the good thing is we've seen that start to come down, right? We've seen more and more spaces open up and look at crossbows in a different mindset and agree that it's really an equal to the vertical archery space when it comes to
but you bring up a
pursue the game earlier.
Yeah, check and make sure if you're not certain, don't just, and like you said too, certain game. If you can and can't use crossbows on, so you got to check that out too.
Yep.
Good point. Absolutely. What about you, Ben? You got any Jackwagons?
Not today, I don't. Other
Okay. Not today.
It's a good day.
Throwing a coat of some sort, but that's about it, really. It does it a lot, but you know.
Well, that counts. That counts as a jackwagon. What about any heroes? You guys got any heroes? Anybody that deserves some recognition, or maybe it's a thing or a product that deserves some recognition that maybe it doesn't normally get in the popular media?
My wife is definitely a hero because she puts up with me being on the road all the time. Like, I'm gone more times than I'm home during hunting season. I'll be gone for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. And she raises our babies and keeps our house up. Everything's in order, and she does a wonderful job doing that.
Fantastic. I love that.
Yep, I'm going to second that. I will second the wife deserves the recognition.
Yeah.
We're dealing with this when we're spending all the time out in the field.
Absolutely. Now, does the wife, does she hunt or do any of that too? Is she
No, we're polar opposite. She don't mind it, but she loves taxidermy, so it works great.
Ah, okay. Very good. Very good. Honoring the wives today. I like that. Get a little recognition.
Yep.
All right. I don't have any more jackwagons or heroes, but if you lead heads have any, email me talkinglead@gmail.com. Let me know your nominations, and we will read them on the air as I find them. Sometimes I miss them and I come back to them, but there's no expiration date for jackwagons or heroes. We can always come back and get them.
Nice.
All right, so let's talk archery. Let's talk a little bit about archery. I don't really necessarily want to get into the history and all that because I'm contemplating maybe doing a whole series on archery, and we'll kind of get into that. And
that's very in depth.
Yeah, it's very in depth. So I think for what we got going on today, let's just stick with kind of what I know and what I'm doing. But I think we just talk about the basics of the parts of the bow and how they operate and the arrows and some of the accessories and things like that. Just kind of high level, we'll get into that because I know a lot of our lead heads are probably into the archery and that might be a little too mundane for them. But for me, again, this show's for me. Me to learn, get caught up with some of our more advanced archers there that are listening to the show. So where do you guys think would be a good place to start, with the bow or with the arrow?
Well, I mean, you got the arrow in the hand, so I mean, we'll just knock that out, and then maybe, like, to your point, we can explain some of the differences between a traditional arrow and obviously a bolt that you're going to have there for your crossbow, which is what you got in the hand.
Okay. Yeah, nomenclature would be, a good thing too, what to call things, instead of just calling this the little flighty things and this sharp end and
We'll take it from, the way I see it in the screen here. We'll go tip to the end of it. So obviously from your tip of it there, you've got one of our Raven, that's a mechanical broadhead, right? So obviously when it comes to your arrows, and this is indicative whether you're talking, vertical, bow space, anything of that nature, you're going to have broadheads and you're going to have field points, right? So field points, which I think you also had come with the kit, that's what you should use for your practice, right? When you're just out, kind of target shooting, etc. And then obviously that mechanical broadhead, or even if it was a fixed broadhead, is what you would use when you're out in the field pursuing game, right? And it just comes down to one's kind of basic, simple setup to, punch holes and targets and fly straight. And the other one is set to fly straight, but punch a really big, gnarly hole and take down game.
And like
highest level of explanation.
There's a blue bazillion varieties of broadheads and field tips out there that you can use. They come in different weights and shapes and functionalities. I was trying to get this one to open, and I don't want to slice my finger open, but the way this broadhead works is once it's released, then this opens up.
Yeah, you'll see you got the two little points there that, that will interact with the hide and the flesh of the animal, right? And the pressure on that, as that bolt enters the animal, it's going to force those to flip up. So that's going to take it to, I think it should be about a 2 to 2.5 inch diameter, wound or opening is what would be created.
think these were 2-inch. I can't remember, but
Yeah, I think that's
100
220 there.
100 grain, 2-inch, what do they call those?
That's a mechanical broadhead.
Mechanical broadhead. There you go.
One thing that I would note is make sure that your field points and your broadhead are the same grain. Because if you're practicing with a 125 and you sight your bow into a 125 and you go to a 100 grain broadhead, well, it's going to shoot off every single time. So make sure they align together.
Just like we tell you when you're sighting in your rifles, you want to use the ammo. And of course, sometimes you can't do that with the arrows on the target, because some of these targets you can't shoot the broadheads into and safely get them out. But yeah, that makes good sense. So thanks for bringing that up, Ben.
Well, to note to that, a lot of times these mechanical broadheads, especially the Raven broadheads, they fly just like your field point flies. So there's no difference whatsoever. There's other brands too that do the same thing, but a lot of times your mechanicals are going to fly exactly the same. And I have a lot of experience with the Raven broadheads. I've killed a lot of deer with them, and they fly I've sighted in with my field point and dead deer exactly where I put it with the mechanicals, and they've done a great job, performed very well.
Nice.
Yeah, and there's a lot of R&D that's gone into the Raven broadheads as well as the Centerpoint broadheads to just like Ben called it out. It's maximizing, that flight path of the arrow, right? Consistency in that arrow or that bolt is going to be impacted a lot by what type broadhead you choose. So, right, it's just like a rifle bullet versus, a handgun bullet. That rifle bullet flies truer, right? Because it's got a broader point or a finer point. It's got the boat tail that all helps it in flight. It's the same thing with your broadhead. If you get a 3-blade fixed, all of that's causing wind resistance, which affects, the trajectory and the trueness of flight of the arrow. So yeah, I highly recommend, whether it's, a Centerpoint or a Raven, or if you've got other brands, look to use the broadhead when it comes to getting out there and pursuing your game. Look to use a broadhead that they recommend with their product.
And to that point, you don't want it, like, for example, my Raven, I can't shoot just any broadhead because of the feet per second. If you're shooting that fast and it's a broadhead that can't handle that speed, it will open in flight, and then it will not fly true. So that's why I go with the Raven broadhead with the Raven bow, because it is engineered, I believe, Brandon, it's 15 pounds or something like that to pop it open.
They're set to work with those crossbows that are rated to where it will not pre-deploy in flight when you're talking over 400 to 450 to 500 feet a second. And that's a legit thing. It's crazy to think, but yeah, that's how fast these bolts are moving. You could pre-deploy a lower end broadhead that's not rated, for the bow.
And on the packaging, it'll tell you what they're rated for. So you want to make sure you know what your bow is rated for. And we're talking crossbows at the moment. Now, I would assume this works the same with compound bows too.
Compound bows are all pretty similar. I mean, you're going to have some that are your speed bows, if you will, and they shoot a little bit faster, but most of the time with a compound, you are not shooting in the 450 to 500 feet per second realm. You're in the 280s to 310s. It's not a, I mean, you're talking, we're looking at a huge gap in feet per second there. So with my compound, I shoot a compound too, but I can just buy any mechanical broadhead and it works fine,
So you don't, not necessarily specific when it comes to the compound bows then?
No, not really. Not at all. Mm-mm.
And that's kind of what I want to talk about, two differences between the compound and the crossbows. And that's another reason why I wanted to get you both on here, that we could, kind of differentiate and pros and cons of, people thinking about maybe getting into it that haven't got in, like myself. I just thought it would be easier for me, especially since the season was upon me, since I haven't done the archery before. If I got a compound bow, I wouldn't feel confident that I could get proficient enough with it to go out and hunt this season with it. But with a crossbow, that learning curve, I guess, proficiency curve dramatically drops to where, you know, I took it out on a weekend and, you know, I was, you know, had everything down pat. No, not a problem. Didn't feel like I would be unethically hunting, you know, taking it out. Just like sighting a rifle, basically.
Yeah, I'll say this. Either way, whether you like crossbows or not, they put meat in the fridge.
They accomplish.
That's what I'm about is putting meat in the fridge. I don't care about, you know, looking cool. I just like feeding my babies and my wife and myself. Now, I love eating that middle. So, you know, that's the way I look at it is any opportunity you have to increase your odds, take it.
Yeah. And that's exactly what was going through my mind is, you know, and plus getting into archery extends the season because archery season starts before muzzle or rifle season. And it just,
in the state of Tennessee, it comes in the end of August for 3 days for a velvet hunt. And then it doesn't open back up till the end of September, but still, you have 3 days in August to go and shoot a beautiful buck. And let me tell you something, the state of Tennessee has some great whitetail hunting. It is a state sleeper.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we don't want that to get around.
Well, we don't just right where I'm sitting. They can come here and see me.
There you go. Absolutely.
And that's another thing, like, you know, we're talking about filling the freezer, you know, because I mean, I think that's a huge part of, you know, the archery world, and especially when it comes to those who are using crossbows, is extending that season for that reason. And I know in our state, you know, if you're working with somebody who's doing a lot of game management on their property, right? Well, you don't want to get out there and potentially shoot a doe. You know, you're going to have a lot of doe tags, but you don't want to shoot your doe after the rut because you don't know if she had that time with that big, beautiful buck on your property. So you don't want to take that chance. So
I passed up
get out and get some of that freezer meat early season.
Yeah, I passed up 6 doe this weekend while I was hunting.
Why?
Huh?
Tasty. Why? Come on, man.
Because I want them to breed.
Yeah, but
I want them to breed. I want more.
You're not killing the unborn fawn and the doe. You see what I'm saying? There's more does there, I can promise you that.
Well, there was other reasons why I didn't shoot them either. They were out of range, but if I was a little more proficient with my crossbow, I may have taken those shots. But anyway, so we're talking about the arrows. So we did the broadheads. Oh, another thing I wanted to ask about the different tips. Are there certain broadheads for certain game?
I mean, that gets into a philosophical point, you know, when it comes to the broadheads, again, that we have rated for the Raven, they're rated all the way up to some of the largest game, you know, up to dangerous game. So they will deploy, you don't need to go more robust. Now, when you get into the vertical archery space, right, especially if you're talking traditional versus compound, you'll have a lot of guys in the traditional space that want to use a 2-blade fixed. They feel it's best for flight. They feel it gives them the best impact and penetration. Again, to Ben's point, because you're working with slower velocity, so different things come into play there. So for the sake of crossbows, no. For the sake of your vertical archery setup, yes, because it's going to depend on what you're doing and what you're going after, what your bow's rated at, all types of different things that you'd need to kind of take the time to research and study and test out for yourself on your targets and see what makes sense.
And there's all kinds of different bows out. When you say compound bow, there's recurve bows, there's you know, there's different, and it's the same thing. There's different types of crossbows as well, and I want to talk about that a little bit later. But let's get through the arrow here first. So the broadheads, they screw in and screw out for the most.
Yep, they screw into your insert there. And so that one that you've got in that center point's just a traditional machined aluminum insert. You will see some people who want to, there are certain hunters, you know, especially in the vertical bow space and the traditional bow space, that want to add weight to the front of their arrow. And there's all different types of logic and reason why you would do that. So there's brass inserts that add weight, etc., that you can do. But for the sake of what you got there in front of you, you're looking at just a standard aluminum insert.
Yeah.
And then that goes into your shaft, right? And so the
Well,
shaft.
we've got this part. We've got this part right here.
Yep, that's the insert.
So this is an insert, and
Mm-hmm.
the function of that is that's what your broadhead screws into. And the insert attached. So this is a separate part. I mean, it can come apart, detachable. And I don't know if are all arrows and bolts this way, or there's some that are made differently. Is this standard?
Now, there's
insert standard.
Yeah, the insert is standard, but when you go to your vertical bows, sometimes they have external inserts as well, and that's all just personal preference, really.
Okay. But I had one of these come off. I shot into the target and I was pulling out, and that part came out. This part doesn't screw in. It's actually
glued in.
Glued, or adhered. Adhesive is used to.
Adhesive is used.
So if it comes out, you have to reglue it. You got to reglue that damn thing. What do you recommend for that as far as an adhesive?
So a couple things on that. So first off, so obviously if that insert comes out, you need to glue it. Most people use like a standard epoxy, right? An epoxy that's rated for multiple material types that it'll adhere to, right? Because you don't want to get Elmer's glue that's not going to hold on to that carbon shafted arrow and pop right back out, right? So I think most folks who would put together an arrow would recommend just a quality epoxy. But I will also say, if you have that happen, if you shoot an arrow and if your insert, pops out, you really need to flex your shaft to make sure that you haven't actually cracked the shaft. And this is something that is just a good best practice, whether you're talking crossbows or vertical bows. Always give your shafts of your arrows a little flex to make sure you don't have a crack. Because if you have a crack, you could easily do yourself some harm. You could blow up your crossbow just with the amount of energy that's built up in that bow. And you could even have the same thing happen in some of the higher rated, velocity vertical bows. You could stand to blow that up, or you could stand to at least blow up the arrow and tear yourself up. And that's just going to be a bad day all around. It's not worth it.
Good point. Good point. So on to that, let's talk about the shaft. Is that what we're?
Yep. So then the shaft of the arrow, and that example you got there, that's one of our Centerpoint ones. So there's all different types of nuances when it comes to this. So an arrow for a vertical bow, typically it's going to be longer, right? You are going to, in a vertical bow, you're going to have your own draw length, which draw length is different between individuals, right? You should appropriately go get sized when coming to a vertical bow by somebody.
Wingspan, right?
Yeah, somewhat. Your wingspan is affected by it. Yes.
Yeah.
So, Ben might, he might draw out at, 35, 36, Ben, maybe even more?
30 on the dot.
30 on the, okay, there you go. Yeah. So, and I like mine set up in like the 27, 28, that's just typically where I'm at. And so again, that draw length on a vertical bow is going to affect the length of the shaft of your arrow, right? Whereas bolts, when we're talking crossbows, are usually more standardized. Right now, you could have different size crossbows that use different size bolts, and we can get into all that. But typically, a bolt is dramatically shorter than an arrow that's used in a vertical bow.
Okay, and the ones I'm using are 20-inch bolts,
which is pretty standard bolt for the crossbow, right? You're going to see that.
An arrow interchange when we're talking about crossbows, or is it always a bolt when we're talking about crossbows?
It's nomenclature changes between people, but I've always called a bolt for a crossbow, and an arrow, whether I'm talking a recurve or a traditional bow or a compound or any other vertical.
It's one of those things that, as I'm getting into this, I want to make sure I'm calling stuff the right stuff, because, like calling a magazine a clip, right. Or it just shows ignorance to some extent, not always, but to some extent. So I want to make sure that we get, the nomenclature right. And last episode we had John Hollister on. We were talking about suppressors. Some people call them, silencers. Some people call them suppressors. Some people call them cans. Some people call them sound moderators. But the term is silencer. They're silencers. Is the term.
Well, I think it just helps if you say bolt versus arrow, then typically people are going to understand you're talking about a crossbow versus talking about something in the vertical bow space. Yeah, so it's just a good way to, delineate or differentiate between the two categories of archery.
Absolutely. So bolts.
Add to, you're looking at the shaft of an arrow, there's different grades of arrow that you can get, and match grade is usually going to be your straightest option for everything. It'll fly the truest. I know that for a fact on vertical bows. Brandon, is that the same in crossbows?
Yep. Yeah, you're going to have what they call, right, and it's tolerances in the machining, right? So they call it the straightness of the shaft, which is a very well-known thing when it comes to vertical bows. You're going to have the same thing in crossbows. So you're going to hear a 0.006 straightness. You're going to hear a 0.003 straightness, and then, all the way up to like a 0.001. And that's a plus or minus tolerance, right? So in other words, that's how consistently straight the arrow is. So the smaller that number means the more consistent and tighter the shaft straightness is, which does affect flight.
I'm glad you brought that up, because when I was looking at the bolts in the stores and I was seeing those numbers, I didn't know what that number meant. So I didn't know if that was something to do with the weight or whatever, but that's just to do with the tolerance of how straight it is.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So on average, you're going to, like a bow or an arrow that you could practice with, be a 0.006 or a 0.003. And then, when it comes to hunting, you'd want to definitely be using no less than a 0.003. And if you're, taking longer shots consistently with your crossbow or even your vertical bow, you probably, or if you're worried about windage, things of that nature, you might want to go into that 0.001 category to just, give yourself that much more of an advantage.
And then, I guess, obviously, the more straighter you're getting, the more cost we're looking at, probably.
Yes. Yeah. And that's exactly how it works.
Okay.
And then grain weight, so you brought that up, right? So you got the grain weight of your field point, your broadhead, but then your arrow also has a grain weight. And that is something that comes into play, again, whether you're talking crossbows or vertical bows. And that's probably the next to the broadhead, that's your biggest impact, right? Okay. So again, if you're going after larger game, you can find heavier grain weight, shafts as well as broadheads. And all of that, right? It's no different than in the traditional firearm space, using a 200 grain bullet versus a 250 grain bullet, right? Well, the 250 grain bullet's going to move slower, but it's going to have a lot more punch, right? It's got a lot more kinetic energy built up in it. It's the same concept when it comes to your arrows or your bolts. A heavier broadhead and a heavier shaft will give you more kinetic energy that is transferred to your game.
Okay.
For example, I wouldn't go hunting elk with a 300 grain arrow.
Right.
Just would not do that. I would want a 500 grain arrow or heavier to go hunt elk with archery tackle.
Because it's a thicker hide and it needs more punch.
Yes, it does. The weight helps it get where it needs to go.
Yeah. And that being said, when I was talking about the broadheads, would there be a preferred broadhead for a big elk versus, a whitetail? Or are we just looking at the same broadheads?
Now, as far
other
as
than the weights.
Yeah, Raven. I would shoot my Raven broadheads at an elk. Absolutely would.
Mm-hmm.
What about a bear?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Is an elk thicker than a bear?
Elk's gonna weigh a whole lot more than a bear.
It's gonna weigh more, yeah. But as far as the hide and the skin,
I would probably say an elk's hide is thicker than a bear's.
Probably.
Yeah, it's more like a cow when you. But those animals weigh 1,200 pounds.
Yeah, those broadheads are rated for hogs too, right? And hogs are going to have some of the thickest hide when you factor in thickness of their actual skin, plus that fat shield that they're going to build up underneath around their, vitals. So in that, it gets into the philosophy, right? So that's the beauty of the crossbow, is not just the consistency in shooting them, right? Because it is a little more of that rifle-esque platform, which allows you to be more consistent with it. But the velocities, right? The velocities help you. That's a lot of what's going to help you take down the game. Because again, vertical bows, I think some of the fastest in the vertical compound space are between 350 to 400, maybe. I think maybe even 300, 375. I haven't seen the latest to see what they've gotten up to. But your average crossbow now, 400 is kind of, almost a starting point, right? 385 to 400 is a starting point for a crossbow. And like when you look at, the Ravens and some of the other ones on the market, now you're talking 500, feet a second is very consistent. So the additional amount of kinetic energy and that bolt, even though it's smaller, even though it's a little bit lighter, even though that broadhead's, only 100, 100 grains, it's kind of like saying, right, shooting, a 22 long rifle versus shooting a 5.56. They're both a
I want to get
22
into
caliber.
mechanics of the bows, and because what each year there seems to be more technological advancements to be able to get those faster feet per second speeds, not only in crossbows but in vertical bows as well. And that's something. Just remind me. I've got a question I want to ask about that when we get to it. So the shafts, different materials also that we're looking at. Talk about different materials that you want to look for and uses. Maybe different materials good for something versus another one.
Yeah, I think different purposes maybe. So when it comes to the crossbow space, right now you're pretty much just going to see carbon or carbon fiber shafted bolts. And that's because that material is really the best, and that's actually rated to handle the energy.
Strongest, lightest weight that you can put together.
Correct. Now, when you get into the vertical bow space, right, or traditional archery, you'll even see people who there's still aluminum shafts, arrows that are out there, and you can even do wood shaft. A lot of guys who are in the traditional space use a wood shaft with original feather fletching, which is, where it all started from.
Man, why are you laughing at aluminum?
That's what I'd recommend.
It brings back a great memory of, I was deer hunting in this camp, and I was 16 years old, and I couldn't find any arrows, and the ammo for my rifle at the time was sold out. So I just went in Dad's closet and raided a bunch of aluminum arrows. Took them to camp with me, ended up shooting a deer, and I was the only man in camp that killed a deer during gun season. And this old man was just sitting there in the corner heckling everybody. And I just thought it was hilarious with old aluminum arrows.
They get the job done, right? I mean, apparently
they break it.
We're killing deer with them before,
Oh, yeah, a few of them.
Now you talked about wooden ones as well. I've seen some things on the interwebs where people, can make their own, and they're, talking about using wood. And I don't think you probably recommend wood for a crossbow, would you? Because of the pressure that they're
not rated for the velocity and the energy. Even a lot of your compound bows nowadays, the faster ones, it's tough. A lot of that you see is going to be in the traditional archery space when it comes to using a wood shaft arrow.
Yeah. So other aluminum, carbon fiber, that's pretty much nothing else they're made out of.
Yeah, that's all I can think of off the top of my head. Those are the main
like
three that you'd see.
Polymer, some kind of polymer. I don't know.
Aluminum wrapped in carbon for a heavier grain arrow too. I'm pretty sure there's some of those out there. But as far as any other materials, I'm pretty sure it's just aluminum and carbon, and more so carbon than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you never know. I mean, right, there's innovations as materials improve and strengthen. I think you had just mentioned polymer. I can't think of one today, not to say that maybe there's not somebody out there who has one. So I don't want to start up the keyboard warriors on that, but for sure, those are the three main materials. And when it comes to our crossbows, I would pretty much only recommend, a carbon fiber or a carbon aluminum, blended shaft would be the only way I would go.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
I was just looking to see if there are any carbon or polymer arrow.
Yeah, there's none that, like I said, none that I can think of. But again, people are innovating materials into new spaces all the time.
Yeah, just because I haven't heard of it doesn't mean it's not a real thing. I just haven't heard.
Yeah, and of course, some people that are listening, and like I said, we weren't going to get into the history, but in the early days, when the bow and arrow first came out, they used wood. They were using wood.
Yeah.
Stone.
And they use bamboo shafts too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, hey, one thing I wanted to touch on too that we kind of came up when we were talking about the broadhead, as far as having to switch it or what you could use it on, for game. If you got a second, you could do a screen share. You could go to the Centerpoint Archery page, and our brand manager Kevin, back here in June, was actually up. I think he was up in DC, up in Canada, and shot him a massive black bear up there with his 430.
On your Instagram or your website?
Instagram. I know what's up on Instagram.
Centerpoint Grams. Here, let me share my screen here.
Do the Centerpoint Gram, and then you'll see it. Yeah, he shot a beauty of a black bear, and he used his 430 with the same arrows you were using for your hunt and the same mechanical broadheads, and he had no problem taking that bad boy down.
So for you lead heads, it's Centerpoint_archery on the grams.
Yep.
And let's go
Keep
down.
going a little bit. Let's see. There it is, right there in the middle of your screen. Yep.
There, look at that.
Yeah.
Big old bear, boys.
So, and that was one bolt, and bear down, man. So that, if you want to know how big of a game can you shoot with that, with the exact setup you've got there in your hand, well, you could take down game just like that, no problem.
Yeah, when was he using the Raven broadheads?
I'm not sure if he was using Raven or Centerpoint. I quite honestly, that's the one I couldn't answer. I'm gonna guess he was using the Centerpoint ones, but yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's a big bear right there. And where was that?
I think that was in British Columbia. I want to say is where he was at.
Okay.
I know it was Canada, but I think that's the province it was.
Canada. He was up in Canada.
Yep.
This is what I want to shoot.
Elk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too. Do
you guys, either of you follow Shockey?
Yeah.
Yep.
See that monster she took down?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that thing was huge.
I
have to say this though, and it may upset some people, but axis deer tastes far better than an elk. Throw that out.
That was a muley she shot, but I think she shot a huge elk too, or was pursuing one. Or
well, here, so she did a video, and I think this might be the video right here where it was bedding down, and they saw the here.
Yeah. Up to it.
It's like that's unreal.
Yeah.
You see that there? It's like somebody put that there. But that's one bed.
They're like, no, that can't be real.
I wonder if she shot it first and they placed it over there.
Well, it depends on if it stands up in the video or not.
It ain't moving at all right there. You would think it would.
No. I'll tell you, we used to pheasant hunt when I was a kid in Kansas, and we'd be walking fields for ringnecks, and you'd come up on some huge whitetails that are just bed down like that. And sometimes you'd see them like that. The really big boys, you'd just see those little tips of ivory sticking out of, the long grass or field grass or whatever, wherever they were bed down.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought that was interesting because I saw that video first and then I saw that picture of her with it. I was like, they shot it first and they staged that, but I don't. I'm not accusing her of anything. So I just
No.
seemed a little too convenient. You know what I'm saying? While on the grams, you guys can look up Ben. He is Benjamin, and you should pop up. The Duck Hunter is his personal one. It's Benjamin the Duck Hunter, and then you can go to @rooted_television for his TV show post there. And you said you do the show on YouTube. Is that where we watch it, or is there a station?
Go for right now.
Say it again.
YouTube and Mossy Oak Go.
Okay, Mossy Oak Go. I like that. Very good. So we're moving down the arrow. Let's move through the arrow a little quicker because I want to get to the bow. I mean, that's the main thing. I think we spent way too much time on the arrow. So we got the shaft, and then we've got these little thingies right here that are called the flights.
Fletching.
Fletching.
Or fletchings. Yep. I'm sorry, fletchings. Where did I get flight?
I don't know where flights. I've never heard that term before.
Oh, badminton. I don't know. I just
only you would bring badminton to this show.
Yeah.
Hey, I connect everything with the 2A community, even badminton, baby.
For all you tactical 2A badmintoners out there.
So here we're at the fletchings here.
Yeah, so fletching, or a lot of times you also hear them called vanes. So we use on those, I think those are blazer vanes that you got on that arrow there in front of you.
Okay.
Right. So that's actually what is going to cause the arrow to fly, right? Without your fletching or without your vanes, your arrow does not really go in any of the direction you want it to go. And if you actually look at slow-mo video of an arrow in flight, the vanes, right, or that fletching is what causes that arrow to rotate. It gives it its spin, which helps its, flight stay true, right? Much like the spin that the rifling of a barrel puts on a bullet.
I like to compare it to an airplane wing. It gives it stabilizes it. It's a stabilizer.
Yeah, stabilizes it big time. That's
they're stabilized.
The best way to say it.
Yeah, and you can also put, like on conventional archery, you can put more of a helical on those vanes or fletching, and it'll give it a harder spin. The one thing you have to do is figure out which way your arrow naturally rotates out of the bow. Best way to do that is take a little Sharpie and knock the arrow in the bow, mark it on the top, and then when you shoot it with no vanes, no fletching or anything like that, and you're like 2 foot from the target. And then you can see which way that it goes, because depending on who makes the string, if they're left-handed or right-handed, that's the way the arrow is going to spin out of the bow.
Whether it's clockwise or counterclockwise. Gotcha. Yeah. That's a neat trick. I like that.
And all so
right. These are interchangeable too, right?
Correct. Yeah, those are, when people fletch their arrows, right? It's just, again, it's an adhesive that's used. I don't want to necessarily say it's an epoxy. There's all different types of adhesives I think people use or people prefer, but it really comes down to several things, right? You've got the size or the length of, your vane or your fletching, right? So when you're thinking like the guys who hunt in the traditional archery space who use feathers, there's 5-inch, fletching, there's 4-inch, there's 3-inch. When you get into the vertical bow space and compound bows and crossbows, you're going to see much like what you have there, 3 vanes, right? You're going to have, kind of your 2 that are one color, 1 that's odd. That all helps you with the orientation that you set the arrow or the bolt in the crossbow, or you knock it in a vertical bow. It's a color reference, if you will, to make sure you've got it on there properly, because there is a proper way to put an arrow or a bolt on a vertical bow or on a crossbow.
And we'll get into the knock here in just a second. But these come in different materials as well. You can get in different sizes too, right?
Correct. Yeah. So that's what I was saying. So
light patterns.
Yep. When you're shooting, like say a traditional recurve bow, because you're shooting off the actual shelf of the bow itself, and it's it's, typically those bows are a wood or some type of composite material. Those people, to not affect the flight of their arrow, use traditional feather fletching, right? Because the feather will compress up against the wood and not impact. Whereas that's more of like kind of like a rubber or like a polymer. If it was in there wrong, it could hit the side or hit the riser of the bow and affect the flight of the arrow. Whereas when you're talking a compound bow, right, or a crossbow, the way that the arrow or the bolt knocks into, the bow itself, there's clearance around those vanes to allow them to fly true and not hit anything, impacting their flight.
Right. And these there's some that have 4. Are there any that come with 2? There is 2.
No, minimum I've ever seen is 3. Yeah.
Okay. I've basically only seen 3 and 4, and 4 is so for extreme steadiness on that. And what I mean by that is for the guys that are wanting to shoot, 100 yards, 70 yards, stuff like that. I don't feel comfortable shooting that far with a compound. Now, that old Raven, let me tell you something, I'll just send it right on out there. I'm not even worried about that. But as far as a compound goes, there's really, for me, there's no need for a 4-fletch arrow, because the 3 with the helical does just fine for what I'm using it for.
Good point. All right. So anything else we want to say about the fletching?
Nope. I think we hit it all.
I do too.
So let's move to the knock.
Yep. So then you have the knock. And so the knock, when it comes to crossbows and vertical bows, is where you're going to have some of the biggest difference. The knock on a traditional bow is actually going to have more of like a C shape to it, because it's actually going to clip on to your bowstring, right? That's how it's held in there. Whereas a crossbow, since that arrow is kind of riding on the rail of the crossbow, or in Raven case, we've got, kind of a free float system, but it still has the arrow supported. So what you see there is what we call a half moon knock, right? Kind of looks like a moon, at half. Yep.
Or big mouth bass.
Or Pac-Man. Some people say Pac-Man.
Yeah, big mouth bass.
Yep.
Big mouth.
So you're going to see that half moon knock as being pretty consistent with most of your railed crossbows. Now, Ravens, as we talked about, Ravens, it's a proprietary technology, and where a lot of that accuracy comes in from is Ravens arrows free float in that system. So in other words, that arrow shaft and that arrow is not riding on a rail. It is actually there. It's a special proprietary knock that we've developed for that. So that arrow knocks into the bowstring on a Raven, and it free floats, and you have 2 little rollers out at front that just support the very tip of the bolt until you fire it, and then it's going. Yeah, so again,
show that we're gonna talk about that. I'm gonna pull the cross here in just a second. But like all the other things, there's different varieties of these. There's different functionalities. Like the one I'm holding up right now is an illuminated one. It lights up after you shoot it. And the one I'm actually holding up right here, I sent Brandon a picture of this. I went ahead and snapped it off.
Oh gosh, you just broke it.
Yeah, I know.
Best man alive.
But here's the thing. I have to consciously, because I've gotten so proficient with my crossbow, Robin Hooding, your arrows with a crossbow is real, and I've 3 arrows I've done this to now, so I have to consciously not try to be so accurate. So I just aim somewhere else, and know. So, if I take a picture of my arrows and they're spread out a little bit, that's the reason why. It's because these things aren't cheap either, they cost money. So
talking about the knock there, if you add an illuminated knock to an arrow that has not had one, it is going to change the weight of the overall arrow.
Good point.
So keep that in mind when you're sighting in your bow. If you midstream put in a lighted knock, illuminated knock, then you need to make sure that you shoot that bow with that knock to make sure you're on the target 100%, because it could throw you off. Any grain change in your arrow from what you're dialed in on can change the whole game.
That's a good
Yeah,
point.
and that's a big reason why, much like with the broadheads, where we recommend you using, our branded broadheads for consistency and shot, it's the same thing with the arrows, because that lighted arrow that you have there, to Ben's point, with the field practice arrows that come with it, we maintain that grain weight throughout. There has been that adjustment to it. So that way you get consistency in shot. You get consistency in grain weight of the arrow all the way from the broadhead through the knock, so long as you're using, the supplied 100 grain, broadheads with it, or whatever broadhead you do buy. If you're using 100 grain, then you're going to be spot on.
Right. So as I was saying, I Robin Hooded this one. That's how that broke. So to replace these, because we were talking about, these other things, you have adhesive here, and this just screws in on the broadhead. What's the procedure for replacing your nocks?
Yeah, so usually your nocks just press in. They have there's like a little molded part to it that holds it into the shaft via pressure, right? And that's specifically important with those lighted nocks, because you want to actually, the way that knock illuminates is that pressure kind of forcing it down hits the little, or makes the connection inside that illuminates it. But when you're done, if that arrow is probably still good, you can actually use what they call as a knock puller that will help you just unseat that knock just ever so slightly, which will de-illuminate it. It'll stop the connections inside.
So there's a little wire and there's a connect. So this is the connector that's up in there.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like there's a little wire right there, but I just pulled that out right now for our viewing audience, and then I would just pop another one in there. I'd buy a pack of these. They come in like 3 and 6 packs.
Yeah, I mean, depending, I think you're probably going to find a 6-pack as being the smallest. Dozens probably going to be very common, right? Most people, you recommend that people buy their arrows in 6s or dozens. For consistency, right? Because there's lot consistency, kind of like a box of ammo, right? You're usually a box of ammo is going to be very consistent. You're going to want to buy your arrows in that same lot amount.
Yeah, your arrows. But I was talking about your nocks. You can get your nocks.
Yeah.
These are sold separate. Didn't come with it. You can switch out. If I wanted to switch these out and put the illuminated ones in, I could do that. You
could, but that, to Ben's point, that's where you need to be mindful of if the arrow didn't come and the grain weight wasn't recommended with that illuminated knock, you would want to weigh that arrow to make sure that you haven't affected your overall grain weight.
Yeah, keeping that in mind. But again, just you can pull it out, you can switch them.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's different colors too. This is a green one. There's there's different colors, and again, variety out there. Variety is the spice of life. So, and with certain crossbows, as to Ben's point earlier, there's certain broadheads that you have to use with the Raven arrows. So, check your manufacturer of your crossbow to see what they recommend, because there are aftermarket arrows out there and other accessories, but you want to find out what's compatible with yours to make sure it's compatible before you buy it.
Yeah, that is correct.
Bolts that we need, arrows or bolts that we need to talk about.
No,
I think this is the same with arrows as it is with bolts, right? The nocks and
it is, absolutely is.
Okay. Good deal. So let's get to the bows now. Let's talk about the bows.
All right.
And for reference point, I've got a crossbow here. And again, there are a blue bazillion different designs on crossbows, and as technology advances, so does the mechanisms that operate them, and cam systems and the buffers, and again the materials that they're made out of, becoming more and more advanced, and lighter. They're becoming a lot lighter too, more compact. As the one that I've been using is the Centerpoint 430X, the Wrath, and it's very compact. It even has a collapsible, or not collapsible. It is collapsible. It's adjustable button stock, and it it folds. If I could fold it here.
Well, that's handy.
I don't ever fold it, but you can. I promise you, you can.
Use
Well,
your air right now.
So small, it's the R29. I can just about put it in my pocket.
I was pushing it the wrong way.
It's like a lightning rod.
So very, very compact. So for you tree stand hunters, which I do for that, or if you're in a tight confined space, and I could still operate it from with the folded stock there. So it's just like your ARs or your AKs that have the folding butt stocks. But this thing's already so compact, but look how much more compact that makes it. And I could cock it from this position.
Now it's considered a pistol bow.
Gotta get it. It's a short barrel bow.
Yeah, that's right. Short barrel bow.
You gotta get a
No tax stamp needed.
Thank God. But and again, there's different sizes too. There's the Raven, I'm sure, is that you have is probably pretty compact and light. Probably a little bit longer, maybe a little bit longer than this. But that's the good thing about this adjustable buttstock on this one, where a lot of them are fixed. And everybody's got different wingspans, different arm lengths, and eye relief is the big thing when you're using the scopes. This will get you the eye relief that you need for that. So where do you think a good place to start with the parts of a bow? Let's just start with this one.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just do front to back like we did on the bolts as well. You want to do back to front? Okay, yeah. So obviously, depending on the crossbow, so this one in specific, you have that folding stock. It's also an adjustable stock. And there's two different types of stocks overall on crossbows, right? So some of them have an adjustable like you have there, but then some of them are molded and fixed, and they're more like a bullpup, right? So when you look at like the Wrath 430, which is an alternate version of that one, it's a little bit shorter. It's got more of a traditional true bullpup style stock. It's all fixed. So again, that just comes down to personal preference, right?
Yeah. And another point, advantage of this is you can change this butt stock out. It comes off. It's just like an AR, just like your AR rifle. And if you've got, and I tested it, and it Magpul fits on here. Mission First Tactical fits on here, which is what I prefer. You can put different butt stock, but I really like the butt stock that comes on. It's really comfortable.
Yeah.
Pad on it. It's lightweight, and it's got this cheek riser adjuster.
Yeah, your cheek riser, and to get a better cheek weld there, that comb is adjustable. You can get vertical with it if you want to. So, I mean, yes, you could swap it out, right?
Yeah.
And I believe your grip there should have the ability to be switched out with any traditional AR.
And here's the thing that I haven't tested yet. I have taken it off, and it does come off. And as far as fitting them on there, I think it does, but I'm not sure the screw hole
I got you.
is the same. So I haven't tested that yet. Yeah, I haven't tested that yet. But the benefit of doing that would be, again, everybody's got different hands, different grips that they like, that you could switch that out with. And some of them will have storage that you could put, things in. Same thing with the butt stock. Some of the butt stocks have hollow ends that you could store stuff in, just some different advantages maybe that people like to go with. But the way it's come, this is stock right here, the way it comes, and it's phenomenal. Yep. And I love this grip that you've got on it already. It's more of a softer polymer,
tactile feel to it. Yeah.
Kind of, I compare it to an ergo. For those who use the ergo grips, it's got kind of that feel to it. Soft, tactile. But yeah, I like it. So, all right, go ahead. So the butt stock, we're talking about different.
Yeah, so you're going from the butt stock right there. Obviously, that one's got a buffer tube. There's no functionality to it. That's just there to hold the butt stock on. Then you're going to get into basically the frame of the crossbow, right? So you've got the rails there. You're going to have obviously the grip and the trigger mechanism. And then you're also going to have there at the front end of that bow underneath, you're going to have your foregrip, right? And that specific model that you have, that foregrip on that model is actually mounted via pick rail. So let's say you did not like that foregrip and you had a vertical grip or some other angled grip that you wanted to use, again, that standard pick rail underneath. So you could take that off and swap that out for a foregrip that fits you. Or
rail capable foregrip you could put on there.
Correct. Or if you wanted to take that and mount that to, you know, a plate that goes into a tripod, and then you wanted a tripod mount that instead of having that foregrip on there, you could do that as well. I've seen a lot of people do that, especially for, you know, maybe a disabled hunter or a youth hunter who doesn't have the, you know, the physiology to physically hold the bow up properly, but they can sight it and they can, you know, squeeze the trigger properly. They just need some help with the weight. You know, a tripod's a great way to go too.
And you could put a bipod on here also.
Yep. Absolutely.
Put a bipod, but you don't need it on this one because we're going to talk about that.
And we'll go right there. So on this one, right, you've got the stirrup on it, and so this is kind of a unique feature on our Wrath 430 and 430X. You've got a foldable stirrup, so that actually folds a full 180 degrees. So you can be straight out, you can come down to 90, and then you can come completely folded under. And it locks in those 3 positions. So once it goes in there, you don't have to worry about it coming out. So a lot of people, when you put it in that 90-degree angle, then you can use that much like it's like having an integrated bipod in the bow itself.
Absolutely. And then when you're ready to reload it, you just pop that up.
Yep. If you were going to do if you were manually cocking it, you know, with the cocking, you know, stirrup that comes with it, then you would, you know, or with the cocking, you know, rope that comes with it, you would put that stirrup out, step on it, cock the bow. Obviously this model comes with the silent crank, which is nice because that kind of goes on the end and you can just do it via that, you know, that silent crank mechanism, which is a really, really nice feature.
Yeah, the cranking are awesome because it's a lot easier to decock the bow as well. When you get out of the stand, you can just run it down real quick, take the pressure off the strings and the limbs and cams and all that, instead of having to physically shoot it in the ground or at a target or whatever. Well, then your bow's cocked all the way to the hunting lodge or whatever have you. I mean, they do make options for the decocking bolts. For those of you out there listening, that you can get you just shoot it in the ground, and it doesn't do anything crazy. But one thing I will throw in there is always make sure to check your strings and cables. Check them.
Yes.
And them, especially on your high speed crossbows, but all bows, even vertical bows. Make sure you keep up and maintain your strings and cables. It's must.
Talk about that if I don't poke myself in the eye here with the
So that's spot on, right? So you're gonna have, you know, the main things you want to check when it comes to your strings on your crossbow is you're gonna have timing dots on your cams.
Hold on, we're gonna get to that. We're not there yet. Once we get up to those, we're gonna talk about those. Y'all are jumping ahead on me here. So so we were talking about, you know, the stir. So we did the stir. We went under. We did all the under here.
Yep.
Talked about the triggers. Anything that you want to mention about the trigger and the trigger group that is on this particular 430X?
No, I mean, your trigger boxes and your trigger groups on most of your crossbows are, I don't want to say, to be completely standard. It's really going to be unique to the actual technology of, you know, of the crossbow itself. So like the trigger group that's on that Centerpoint is really going to be nothing like the trigger group on a Raven, because a Raven has a completely different firing mechanism. So we could spend hours just talking about that. But it's going to feel very much like a traditional rifle, right? A single stage trigger. Some of them are 2-stage, and you'll feel that. So some will have a little bit of a creep, and then you'll hit that shelf, and it should break nice and clean, just like you would on a traditional, you know, bolt gun.
Right. This one's like you said, single stage. Now, the way I've got my trigger and then my release is behind my trigger. Is that typical on most crossbows?
It is now, and as where we're at in, kind of the current phase of crossbows, where compactness is a huge key as far as, premium features. You are seeing more of them who are bringing the trigger itself in front of the actual, mechanism, you will, that's holding or, holding onto the string itself.
Yeah.
String and arrow, string
and
and bolt.
Ben, has it been your experience that this is the typical setup for most? Is is behind the trigger?
Yeah, the one I've seen, and like I said, I have pretty much just used the Raven, but from my experience and what I have seen, a lot of them are set up that way, and I haven't had any issues with functionality. In fact, it functions flawlessly. Every shot is exactly right, unless I pull it or something I've done.
Because you were talking about bullpup design earlier, that the 430 is, but by definition, I mean, this is a bullpup because your trigger is in front of your release
firing
mechanisms and everything. So, which gives you the compactness. So you're able to push all that forward and bring that back and just compact everything together. So in keeping with that, so when we pull our strings back to cock it, and is that what it's called? It's called cocking.
Mm-hmm. It's cocking. Yep.
Right.
So you're actually cocking the
our
bow.
nomenclature is correct when we're talking about this stuff. So we're
Yep.
cocking our bow. It'll go in this area down here.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's the catch. I don't know, what do you call this? What do you call that?
Yeah, I mean that's the catch that would technically be your firing box, your firing mechanism. So there is a part that will come up and grab that cable, right? That's what's actually tied ultimately to the trigger, and that's what you're depressing, or releasing when you pull that trigger.
Yeah.
So so you would come up, and whether you're using the manual cocker, right, the rope cocking device, or whether you're using the silent crank device that comes with it, you're ultimately pulling that string back all the way back into that firing mechanism and locking it in place. And then you are going to set that bolt down into, the center of the rail.
Yeah,
right?
We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that, but this part, still more parts here.
Yeah.
I get technical. So when you bring the string in and it gets here, it catches it, but it's also automatically putting your safety on.
That is correct. Yeah. So you've got what we call basically it's like an anti-dry fire mechanism. So it will that crossbow, until you seat that bolt, right? There's another part of that mechanism. Until that bolt is seated, you are not going to be able to release that string. So in other words, it's going to prevent you from dry firing that bow.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's not typical of all crossbows. That's a design that you guys have, a feature that you have on Centerpoint.
Correct. That's a premium feature, and I don't want to say we're the only ones who do it, but it is on your more premium crossbows. That safety feature is going to be an option, if you will. So some don't do it, but pretty much on all of our crossbows, we have gone to that safety mechanism. And you are also going to have a physical manual safety there on the side next to that fire mechanism. Yep, your finger's right, that little anodized green piece.
And it is it's ambi too, so it's on both sides on their 430X. So I could access that from either side. But once you cock it, it automatically, the safety goes on. So I like that feature. So fail safe. It's got a nice fail safe there. And then you physically have to push that to release it. Just like you would your, booger hook off the bang switch until you're ready to go. I don't know. It's not boom. It's not boom with a crossbow or an arrow, but whoosh, I guess. Whoosh, till you're ready to go. Whoosh. And then you got this piece. So let's move up to the rail, the optic rail. And again, I don't guess all crossbows have this.
You've got some more and more are going that direction, right? Where you're going to see it's like a cantilevered mount that has pick rail is what your scope's going to mount to. And then if you kind of see hanging off of that pick rail, there's a little segment there that has a little roller ball in it. And that's actually what's going to hold your bolt in place, right? Because again, your bolt, unlike vertical bow, that half moon knock is not holding on to the string, right? So that bolt could move forward, move back if you didn't have something holding it in place. So that roller ball there is going to help hold that in place. So if you're moving around, your bolt doesn't come kind of flying out of the bow while you've got it cocked.
Yeah, I just inserted one of the bolts there just to show you, and it also helps you to guide it and keep it in place, and it holds it there too. So if I've got it pointed down, up, sideways, the arrow isn't going to slide out.
Correct.
Holds it in place, so I like that. That's a nice feature. All right, so anything else down this area other than the scope mount, and that gives you the option with the pick rails. Pretty much any scope on the market that's pick rail compatible or accessory, depending on what you want to mount there, you can put. Same thing with the underthing. I wanted to mention that with your foregrip. You don't necessarily have to put a foregrip. You can put bipods, anything that will attach to a pick rail you can put under there. We were talking about lights or maybe those 45 degree offsets, and you could put a light or a laser. Again, you got to see what's legal in your state, and but for hunting purposes, you want to do that. If you're just out rec shooting, I don't guess it really matters what you put on there. Put anything you want.
Yeah.
Put a camera. You can put a camera. You can put a GoPro or something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people put a GoPro, or maybe if you're in a state where night hunting hogs or predators is allowed, if you want to put like a green or a red light on it to illuminate. You can do all types of fun stuff like that with it.
Yeah, and I don't have my thermal right here, but I could put a thermal up
here.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I would suggest is with the higher speed bows is to use an optic that is designed for the speed of that bow, that you can set it to where, like the Raven, for example, it has a pneumatic numbering system on a dial on the back end of the scope that I can turn based on the feet per second the bow is shooting. And that is important because everything falls under that, and the grain weight of the arrow and all of that. So that is an important thing to keep in mind, is use an optic that is compatible for the bow you are using.
Yeah.
Can y'all see
100%. So like if you can you change out the scope that comes with that Centerpoint? You can, but again, you want to make sure that whatever scope you are getting, either to Ben's point, has that adjustable to where you can make sure to dial in for the velocity. Otherwise, your point of aim, point of impact will be off, and you'll have inconsistent shots. So that scope is rated for the 430 feet a second that we're getting with the Wrath. And the Ravens, right? So let's say you wanted to use one of the Raven scopes. We have like our sniper package that's got the adjustable turrets, right? That gives you the ballistic, where you just got to set your windage and then you can dial your elevation just at a click, right? The beauty of those Raven scopes is they also come with that dial that you adjust that will automatically adjust the objective based on the velocity you're getting, right? And again, that comes because we have Raven crossbows that go all the way from 400 feet a second all the way up to 500. So that's really important to make sure that your scope, the way those scopes work on crossbows, that your accuracy is spot on.
Yeah. Just like a rifle scope, saying if you're shooting a 5.56 versus a 7.62, there's different reticles made for those specific bullets and their drops and.
Correct. Yeah. So you wouldn't want to just go try to pick up a rifle scope and put it on a crossbow.
I wouldn't want to drop that 308 scope I've got up here. You see for my show.
You're 2x25 on that bad boy. You could, I guess, if you're dialing in for 500 yards.
Yeah.
I think we could send one 500.
Yeah, just have to make sure the wind is not blowing.
There you go. Absolutely. Well, like anything, you want to sight it in, and then know your reticle, know the intelligence in your reticle when you're setting that in, and go by the manufacturer's.
Yeah, so like typically it's at 20 yards is usually right on most. I believe that scope that you have there, it should be a 20-yard sight in, and then based on the velocity that that's rated for, if you're using the appropriate bolts, you haven't changed to a heavier bolt, etc., right? Then your other pins will be good all the way to, I think that scope's got 60 or 80 yards on it, I believe.
Yeah, it's got four circles, but yeah. And I was at 45 with it, sighting it in my backyard here. And again, that's where I was just Robin Hooding the arrows, and I was like, I gotta quit doing that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I just started picking other points to shoot, and it's just accurate as can be, man. It's
I mean, 430 feet a second, you can go out to 100 easy.
No, I could do it. I have, and I've gone out, and I've tried it out a couple of times. My first time I tried it, though, I came up short, and I did a little video of it. I set the camera up in front of the target, and I came up short, and it skipped.
Skipped, yeah.
And you saw it in the frame. You saw it, and it popped up over the target. And I had some backdrops, and I had some trees and stuff like that. And I went to look for it, and I did use it. I used the lighted one, and I thought it'd be easy to find, and I couldn't find it. And I went back to the property, to our farm, and it was another 100 yards. I found it like the next week.
Yeah.
I was walking around the perimeter, and it was just there, and I just stumbled upon it. It was, and I never thought it would have gone that far, especially through all those trees and everything. But there it was. I found my arrow.
Yeah.
I was happy.
A lot of energy in that bad boy.
There is a lot of energy. Yeah.
So.
I'm just surprised it didn't stick in a tree. All the tree and brush and everything. It made it through all that and went to the other side.
Yeah, that would be my luck. It would bury up into a tree, and there would be nothing you could do with it at that point.
Yeah. But I was already 100 yards out shooting at the target. I missed it, and it was another 100. It was about maybe not at exactly 100, but it was close to another 100 yards out where I found it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I'd believe it all day.
A lot of energy. Yeah. So just saying.
Yeah.
So all right, let's move on. So the rail. Let's talk about the rail.
Yep.
And
so right, your rail is obviously what the arrow or the bolt in this case is going to ride on. It's going to rest on that, right? That is a pretty consistent indicative component of almost every crossbow. Again, except when you're talking Ravens, because Ravens, it's a proprietary design. They do not use a rail. It is free floated. But for most of them, right, you're going to have that rail.
Yeah. And I want to talk about that free float if we have time, but we're going to stick with this right now. So yeah, this is what the arrow guides the arrow down and is going to keep it straight and on target.
And your string is going to ride on that rail as well, right? So you're going to notice you've got the actual bowstring that's going to contact the bolt itself is going to ride on top of that rail, right? So that's ultimately how it's working, is those cams are pulling that cable forward, pulling your string forward. That's what's going to force that arrow out, force that bolt out. Yep. There you go.
Just like that. And I'm not going to do it right. I'm not going to cock it on the show, but yeah. So that would be down here. That arrow releases, and then that sucker goes ba-boom.
Mm-hmm. Ba-boom, right into the pump station.
And so then you've got, those are your two dampeners that you have there. And that's to, right, obviously as that cable string comes forward, to not let that string overextend and cause a problem. You've got those dampeners that will suppress that string and stop it. And that also helps. You'll notice they're made of rubber and they've got some little wings on it. That's also to help with the vibration, right? Which is ultimately affects the quietness of the bow.
Dampeners right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so your dampeners are mounted into now what's really the working part of the bow, right? Your fore end, which then has your limbs and your cams, right? So we'll take forend first. So the forend is what's actually mounts that front part of the bow to the rail. And so that's a machined aluminum forend you got there. No, you don't have to move that. You can flip it back over.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
I want to show that bolt because when you get it, you got to put it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't come. I mean, maybe you send some put together, but typically this whole part right here slides into the railed part, and then that's the bolt that holds it in there, and then right here also.
Yeah. So center points are going to come unassembled. Your forend with your limbs and your cams and your string is going to be one part of it, and then obviously, the stock and the rail, everything else is going to be the other part. So you will have to do some moderate assembly, and that is mounting that forend to the actual, shaft and stock of the crossbow.
Takes 10 minutes, real quick.
Oh yeah, it's quick. It's super rigid. You won't have a problem. It's not a complex process at all.
So, all right, continue.
Yeah. So you've got your forend there, and then obviously the limbs are mounted to that. So your limbs are what is kind of coming down to the side, right? So that's the part, and the limb is held on via brackets to that forend, right? And then the limbs ultimately connect to the cams, which the cams are kind of those, semicircular things there in between the two limbs, right?
This
so
is what makes it easier to pull that 200 pounds of. I don't know. Is this 200 pounds? What's the pull on this?
Oh, your draw poundage. I want to. Yeah, I'm gonna say it's 180, 200, somewhere right in there, I believe.
I think I read it was 200.
Back right off the top of my head.
Yeah, which on your typical compound bow, what is that, Ben?
I'm drawing back a 70. I mean, it goes up to 80 and different things like that, but typically you have to get a whole different limb set up for that. And it depends on the brand too that you're going with. I mean, they have bows for kids that are 10, 20 pounds all the way up to 70, 80 pound bows as well. It's just all in.
You're not seeing a 200 pound compound bow.
No.
Yeah. Again, like we were talking about before, the velocities that you get from a crossbow versus a compound bow is one of the advantages of going with this, and the compactness to get that kind of speed.
That's right.
I mean, you look at the width of this one right here. This is what, like 12 inches, 13 inches from cam to cam?
Yeah, so they call it axle to axle. So axle to axle, when that bow's uncocked, is 12. And when you actually cock it, you go down to 9.
It comes down to 9, yeah. But I mean,
already
it looks like it.
Tight.
Right now, you look at it and you think it's probably already cocked, but it's not.
Right.
So you bring it in, and it makes it even more compact. Only now, you said 9 inches from axle to axle. So when you're in confined spaces, you're up on a tree stand, or you're in a, one of those smaller hunting blinds. Makes it really nice.
Yeah, or if you're even out doing, like, the nice thing with crossbows is you can spot and stalk, and so that's really, when you're seeing the crossbow market, as far as like how it's evolving, it's all about, right? I mean, obviously there's the speed game and the velocity increase, right? But then your other big levels, or your big things that are features for a crossbow, is how compact it can be axle to axle, whether that be uncocked or cocked. And then obviously how compact it can be from the forend to the end of the buttstock, because that measurement kind of from the forend, right, from where your string is at rest to where your string is cocked, that's called your draw length, right? And so your draw length is one of the biggest things outside of the cams and outside of the limbs that affect how fast you can get that bow. So, right, it's a never-ending balancing game of, you can make faster crossbows, but you'd have to make them much longer to increase their draw length.
Yeah.
So you can have bigger cams that hold more kinetic energy.
And the purpose in the cams, like you said, is be able to hold more kinetic energy, but it also makes it possible for mortals to be able to pull that back too, because
Correct,
it takes
yeah,
a lot of that pressure off. Otherwise, you know, a mortal man couldn't do this more than once. You know,
right.
This guy.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why you're not seeing the velocities in the vertical crossbow space, even in compounds, because to Ben's point, you know, Ben's a big burly guy, you know, pulling 70, 80 pounds. I mean, that's not every hunter. That's a smaller niche of hunters who can actually pull that. So for an example, I pull between, you know, when it comes to a vertical bow, I'm pulling between 55 and 60 on a compound. And when I'm pulling a recurve, I'm actually pulling between 45 and 50, right? So, I mean, that's a big part of what affects, you know, the velocity there on those vertical bows.
Right.
And so it's just a limitation. You know, vertical bows are never going to be able to get into that kinetic energy space that crossbows can get.
Good point. Good point. Anything else we need to talk about as far as in the limbs and the cam systems and the strings?
Yeah, so the cam system, and again, some uniqueness here that we have is, right, so one of the difficult parts, and this is a big part of what differentiates both the power and the consistency in a Raven versus a Centerpoint, is the fact that those cams, because you have a rail that string and that arrow rides on, since it's not free float, those cams have just ever so slightly a little bit of lean to them, right? And that lean is all things that affect the accuracy of your shot. And it's probably very hard to see to the naked eye, but if you actually got a level out and measured it, there's a little bit of lean. And as you cock that bow back and bring it fully cocked, those cams pitch a little bit as well. And all of that pitch in that cam affects the accuracy of the shot. So again, that's something very consistent that you see. And so that's why when people say, well, hey, why do we go from the price point that you see on a Centerpoint, right? You know, where you're talking $600, $800 for, you know, that model, depending on which version you get, versus a Raven where you're kind of starting out that, you know, $1,400 and up range. And a lot of that comes into the technology that's used in the limbs, but also in that free float technology, because all of that impacts the consistency of the crossbow and also impacts those ultimate velocities and how small of a footprint that bow can be as well.
What I'm playing with here for our video audience is I just attached the quiver, and it has a quiver attachment on here. I guess a lot of them do, but the cool thing about this is, again, it's pick rail mounted, so you have the ability again to ambi this. You could switch it from side to side. Your quiver, this one holds three arrows, which is pretty standard. But you could switch it, you know, for your left or right-handed shooter. And you have the ability to quickly detach. It's got a quick detach. There's a little latch there. You just pop it, and then when you get where you're going and you need more space, mobility, then you can just detach it if you want to carry it that way. You don't have to. You know, a lot of people choose not to carry their quivers on their crossbows. But again, this is more real estate that you could put some other accessories. Again, we're talking about cameras, talking about lights, talking about, you know, whatever. Maybe you got a snack holder there. I don't know.
Yeah. Bring all
right?
But is it a cup holder, right? Are we talking like minivans now? It's like, how many cup holders that thing got?
I mean, you could definitely.
Beaver cake in there, I'd be all for it.
We could definitely probably fashion one of those out of this, but again, it's options. You know, it gives you with that pick rail, gives you the options again to go ambi, to go multi-purpose. You know, from different mountings that you may have. And I'm thinking about taking this off, even though, you know, my first 2 hunts that I went on with it, it's good, but I could lose some weight here also with this. It serves a purpose, and I'm talking about the handguard guys right now, for those who aren't watching. But again, there's a plethora of aftermarket handguards that I could put on here too, that you're comfortable with. So it's limitless, and that's what I like about it. But this one is very comfortable.
Yeah, it's got a good that foregrip's got a good angle to it.
I'm doing a prone or knee shot.
Yeah, I like it's got that the way it goes flat and then it comes down, because let's say you were trying to like bench rest that, on a window ledge, if you're in, more of a traditional shooting house, or if you got a bag that you shoot off of, something like that, it allows you that flat spot there that you can kind of butt up against and really get it into your shoulder. Because again, much like a rifle, the tightness in your ability to hold your crossbow is going to help in the consistency of your shot.
Stability. Yeah, stability. And if you
100%.
prefer a vertical over a angled, foregrip, you have that option here with this. You can do that, which is why I like it. But this one, it's a soft rubber grip, which again, grip is where it's at. So if you're putting this on something, leaning against it, it's not just going to slide off. It grips the surface of what you're putting it on. So, or if it gets wet or moist, something like that. I like that. You like that wet or moist?
Of course you do. Everybody's favorite word, right?
You said moist. So I don't know other features that we could talk about. I think we pretty much covered at least your crossbow. And again, there's different manufacturers have little different varieties in the way they do things. But this would you call this a compound crossbow?
Well, yeah. So in most crossbows you're going to see on the market today are compound, right? So in other words, you have, when you come at full draw, you have that let off, much like what you talk about going from traditional archery to a compound.
Does this make
those
compound?
Cams allow let off.
The cams, is that what makes it a compound, or the cams?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. But there are some that don't have cam systems that are out on the market that you guys can get. Again, there's a variety of different crossbows out there, and for different age groups. There's youth crossbows out there too. Yeah.
Most of your youth crossbows you're going to see are just traditional limbs. There's not going to be a cam system there. It's not going to be that compound setup. And again, that's because then it's lighter draw, so they can cock it. It's also, they don't, when you're learning, you don't need all the crazy speeds that, could cause problems. It's more about, getting the good basic and getting good foundation down.
Right. So anything else you think that we need to cover on as far as the parts, functionality, anything like that on the crossbow itself?
No, I think we've covered everything. I think the only other part we didn't talk about, obviously you've got the foregrip there, and so this is kind of this will be our safety segment, if you will. You'll notice there's two little wings that kind of come off of the rail there right above that foregrip. And that's very intentional, and you're going to see that on every crossbow, and that is intended so you don't get your fingers up on the rail. You do not want your fingers anywhere up in that space above that line on the rail, because that string is coming down with all that energy down that rail. If you were to get a finger up there or around there, you would bye-bye finger, bye-bye digit. Yep.
Hey, clip them off really quick. And that's a good feature, because people's hands tend to creep, and that's another good purpose of this too, is it keeps your hand down here too, instead of riding it up in this area or something like that. So that is a good point. I like that. Does that have a name?
It's just the finger guards, or the hand guard. I've heard it called both.
Yeah, that's a nice feature.
And you'll see that consistently, pretty much every manufacturer. Now, they're going to look maybe a little bit different. Some of them will be scalloped a little bit different or shaped a little bit different, but at the end of the day, they're all, and they're going to be kind of, skeletonized like that to keep weight down, but also not be so skeletonized you could actually get a finger through there, right? At least for adults.
And again, this is polymer. So we're talking about polymer in bows. This is a polymer piece, like a Glock or something like that.
Correct.
That's there. It's lightweight, but yet sturdy and strong.
It's not going to break on you. You're not going to push it too hard and have it crack off. That's a pretty robust part of that crossbow, because that's a big safety feature, right?
Absolutely. And, let's talk about the triangle, the deadly triangle. You want to keep your digits, out of that when it's cocked, definitely.
Right.
And that goes into proper bolt loading, and maintenance and everything like that. But before we talk about that, let's talk about the maintenance, because Ben was talking about it earlier. Your rails and your strings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Let's
go
let Ben-
ahead, Ben. I'll let you jump in on this one.
I didn't know if I need to reiterate what I was talking about before. Pretty much that's one of the main things in my mind to keep a check on is your strings and your cables, because it all starts and stops there. In my mind. Now, Brandon, you probably can shed more light on this, but if a string or a cable blows, it is not a good day at all. So it is important to make sure that is taken care of and kept up.
And talk about
100%.
Talk about how you do that.
Okay, so your strings are gonna have a shot life to them or a time life to them, right? So what we recommend is, depending on the crossbow, and again, look at and this will be the same for every manufacturer. Look at the site, but I believe we recommend changing the strings on that model that you have there every 500 shots. Might be a little bit more, but I think 500 should be sufficient. Err on the side of caution, right? Or if your strings sit
close to that.
Do what now?
Close to that. Yeah.
Yeah, are you? Okay. Well, there you go.
I've been wearing it out in the backyard, dude. I've been practicing heavily.
I'll be
they're a blast to shoot.
So then we also about 200 shots.
Okay. Yeah, you're good.
I've only had it less than a month, about a month.
I don't think it's been too long.
No, it's
so you definitely want to watch the shot count on your strings and kind of keep track of that and switch them out, or every 2 to 3 years, even if your bow's kind of been sitting, we would still recommend that you probably go change your strings, make sure that they're fresh, you don't have any fraying, right, anything like that, because if you start to see fraying, that you pull that back, all that energy, it might look like it's okay, but next thing you know, that string pops, and as Ben said, you've got a bad day on your hands. Both from blowing your bow up, but also from safety, because you never know where that bolt or, is going to go. So you definitely don't want to experience that.
And even on the strings, you got the serving. Talk about that.
Yeah. So your serving, right, is what the actual knock is going to rest on. And so you want to, keep your eyes on the serving too, make sure it's not coming undone, coming untangled. Obviously,
the serving is an area that's been reinforced, I guess you would say, with another material.
Correct. Yeah, that's because that's the part that's going to have the direct contact with the actual arrow or the bolt itself.
And the rail.
And the rail, correct. On a crossbow, it contacts the rail as well. So you want to keep your eyes on that area. And again, that's also, if your serving's coming undone, does it mean your bow's going to blow up? Not necessarily, but it will affect the accuracy of your shot, because you could push that arrow out a little funky, have the flight of it come out a little bit off trajectory, and maybe your windage is off, right? So it's all the little maintenance parts to keep up with, but keeping the wax, right? You got the wax that comes with the crossbow, having your rails, keeping your rails waxed. So that's going to help with that friction. That's going to be a key part of a crossbow as far as when you talk maintenance. As long as you got that waxed, that's going to help you extend the life.
The wax and the lube are, sometimes you don't want to put lube on your strings or vice. The wax, I guess it doesn't matter, but the lube, there's one of them that you don't want to get on the strings because it could affect the strings. What was that? Was it the lube or the wax?
I've
seen some that's specifically for the rails, and I've seen some that's specifically for the strings. Two separate.
So there is a string wax, but that's usually being used on like a vertical bow, like a traditional bow. You would wax your string on like a traditional bow.
Yeah.
When it comes to your crossbow here, you're not going to need to do that. Waxing the rails, the main reason you're doing that is because you do have friction with the string and the rail. And so that wax is just going to help that friction, which is going to help velocity and help accuracy.
Right. And you want to make sure you keep it waxed.
Correct.
At all times. Now, for our listeners, and you may not be aware of this, but Seal One of our sponsors, they make it's called Bow Pro. And it is for lubing the rails and waxing your strings as well, keeping your strings maintained. So I've been using that on here, and it works fine. They've got a paste. This isn't the paste, but they've got a paste, and it works really good too. And they've got like a little applicator in case you didn't want to just do it with your finger. But you just put it on there, you just smear it with your finger, and you go all the way back into where the trigger action that holds the bow, all that rail area right in through there. You don't want to get it back up in there because it'll collect dirt and stuff. So you want to make sure it's clean back in your action area. But yeah, so that's what I've been using. So for you guys who have the Seal One, you can just use your Seal One or the Bow Pro. It's a specific Bow Pro. It's the same thing. FYI, it's the same.
There you go.
Yeah, that you use.
Yeah, so obviously waxing that, and then checking your string, and then the other thing is your timing of your cams, right? So you're going to have what they call timing dots, and it might be hard for you to pick it up on the camera here, but there's two little imprinted dots or dashes that's actually on the cam itself. You should see it up there by the string. It should be more towards the
this
back.
way.
Yeah, I mean, without it, like, again, it's hard for me to see, but there should be two little dashes in. So what that is to make sure your string should line up between those dashes. If your string is lining up outside of those dashes, that means one or multiple of your cams is out of timing. And that's bad for several reasons, right? It means your bows, it's affecting your accuracy, more than likely affecting your speed. And then obviously in the worst case scenarios, it could ultimately affect, the safety of the bow, because if the, cams get too far out of timing, then it could blow up, right?
So this is right behind the arm.
The limb, yep.
The limb. So my tick marks are right behind those, right under those. So I can't show them on the camera, but you're saying make sure my strings line up with those. What do you mean?
So in other words, it should almost think about it almost like a window, right? So your string should land in between those timing dots. So if you were if you're looking at it vertically, you should have a dot on top and you should have a dot on bottom, and your string should be in the middle of them.
I should have it down here too.
No, you should just have two timing dots on each cam.
Okay. Maybe
they should be kind of imprinted right on.
I see a tick up here. I got
a center point right here. Let me see if I'll be able to show you on mine.
Hey, Brandon, second, I got a center point too. Just kidding.
Where's your raven? You're supposed to bring show and tell, man.
All right.
Yeah.
Go get it. Where's that?
I don't know if I can get the light right, but
okay.
So you kind of see that little dash right there. I don't know if the camera's zooming in on it. That little dash right there. That's my timing dot. I've got an adjoining one on the other cam. And if you notice how, if I'm holding this up right, my string is lining up with that dash. So that dash is striking my string. Does that make sense? See that? See how when I hold the bow up, it looks like the dash and the string are equal?
Which string? The front string or the one?
String right here.
Oh, that string.
Right
okay.
Here. That string.
I'm with you now.
That dash are in line. You see that?
Yeah.
And then that string and that dash on the other side are in line.
Okay. I was looking at the knock string.
Gotcha. Yeah. So as long as those dashes, or sometimes they're dots on either side of the string, are aligned, they're even, in other words, then your cams are properly timed. They're in time.
Gotcha.
If you start to see one of those dashes or your dots get out of pitch with the parallelness of that string, then your cam is out of timing. And that's going to affect your accuracy, your speed, and could ultimately affect the bow. And again, worst case scenario, blow your bow up.
It ain't good. Just like the timing in your car engine.
In a sense, yeah. So that's a maintenance thing. So if you see it go out of timing, then it, obviously if you're a proficient archer, you have your own bow press, then it's probably time to change out your strings. If you're not, you could go to any reputable bow shop or retailer that has a bow shop, and they would be able to swap out your strings for you. They'll check the timing, make sure it's good, make sure it fires and functions properly before you get it back and you take it either to the range or out in the field.
Gotcha. Good tip. All right. Any other maintenance things? What about arrow maintenance or bolt maintenance? Anything?
Bolt maintenance is
other than like you were saying before, flex it, make sure there's no cracks or fractures in it.
Yeah. No, I mean that's it. And checking your nocks, checking your inserts, making sure everything's seated. But your vanes, your fletching, making sure it's all adhered on there good. Ben, anything else? I mean, that's all I could think of, just kind of common sense stuff.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can think of as well. And, obviously you don't want to store your arrows with broadheads next to your strings and cables. If they're just, hey, it's happened before. I mean, think about it, you just put it all together and it's just not a thought until you go in there and your bow is disassembled in 1,000 pieces.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So
common sense, which there's not a lot of that these days.
Hey.
But unfortunately, it happens. But I gotta get a new knock, a couple of new knocks. So that's gonna be my next purchase.
Seems to me like you need a whole nother target so you can shoot at different targets.
Well, I was trying to be accurate. I was checking the accuracy.
Well, accuracy isn't defined by grouping. It's defined by putting the arrow.
Yeah, but I shoot rifles, man. Like I said, it's my first time getting into archery. So, shooting a rifle grouping is what it's all about. If you shoot a hole, then you got to worry about putting another bullet in the hole. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's trying to do that. We're just trying to slip one into that old lung or the heart.
Right.
We're trying to
I'm still in that rifle mentality, so I gotta get out of that. But yeah, you're right. What if you hit what you're aiming at, then it's freaking accurate. So.
Yes, exactly.
That's it.
Yeah, but I learned that lesson. I was like, I'm not gonna do that anymore. Fortunately, it didn't jack up the arrow. It just jacked up a couple of the knocks. So I get those, no problem. All right, let's do this. I'm gonna go to our Instagrams. We're gonna do some listener questions.
All right.
While I'm doing that, not before, but while I'm doing that, we have this segment also. It's called Facts to Fight the Myths, and I'm gonna give the two of you an opportunity to bust maybe a myth or maybe a misconception or maybe a pet peeve that you have that you'd like to address with our audience. So we'll start with Brandon. Is there a myth out there that you'd like to bust, or a pet peeve that people have maybe with archery or hunting or just anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think specifically related to crossbows, since that's what I'm here to, talk about, and at least that part of archery. I hate the myth or the misperception that crossbows are really only for, really young, immature hunters or disabled hunters or really old hunters. That's not true. That's a
or
total
you're less of a hunter because you use a crossbow. He's like,
right.
You're not a real hunter. You don't use a compound bow or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I've known a lot of guys who are, they're dedicated, to the vertical archery, whether that's traditional or compound. But they have certain things or certain times that they want to pursue game with a crossbow. whether that be because they're going after, bigger game that, they're not, confident maybe in their, vertical archery capabilities, it could be whatever, or some people just want that, ethical shot, if you will. So, I mean, I read a statistic one time that said it was like folks were 65 to 70% accurate with a vertical, compound bow, and they were 75 to 80% accurate, same shooters, with a crossbow. So again, it's proven that people are more proficient, more accurate. And when you think of a time where hunters are sometimes maligned for not, ethically taking game, or being able to put game down, in the fastest manner, I could see why some people maybe want to go to the crossbow space because they don't have the time or the dedication to put in to be that proficient with a vertical bow.
Mm-hmm.
But we want to embrace all hunters, and we want them to get out there. So the crossbow gives them that opportunity. Maybe they don't have the time, so they can get out there.
Why I picked up the crossbow. That was my whole reason in going with crossbow is time. For one, to get proficient with a bow, and I wanted to archery hunt this season, and I was able to do that. So so it's just removing that stigma, that sometimes you see, right? It's just like you got gun snobs, you get archery snobs, you get all these people who try to tell another person. So I really just say, hey, pursue the passion, whatever you like, whatever you enjoy. If you want to go pursue game with the crossbow because that's what you like, that's what you have interest in, that's what you feel comfortable with, then do it. Don't worry about, the stigma because it's unjustified. It's a total myth. Cool. That's a good one. What about you, Ben?
I will say to that, people need to stop worrying about what everybody else is doing, and just mind their own business, because quite frankly, to Brandon's point, I don't really care what anybody thinks. If I want to kill something with a crossbow and it's legal, guess what? That's what I'm going to do, because that makes me happy. I don't care about if somebody thinks, oh, well, you're not a real hunter because you use a crossbow. Oh, okay. That's fine. That's your opinion. Everybody's got one. I don't care. But the thing that I really struggle with is, hunting just for a trophy and not for the food. That really drives me insane. It really irks me to take an animal's life and not to consume it for food, because biblically speaking, that is what they are here for. Genesis 27:3-4 goes into take your bow and quiver and go out to the field, hunt game for me, bring it back and make a savory meal. So to me, they were here on this earth for us to consume, not to be trophies and only trophies. Now, granted, if you shoot a great buck, yeah, you're going to get it mounted. I do the same thing, but I still eat it. It goes into the crock pot with the other victuals that are there, the potatoes and carrots, which I don't eat carrots, by the way, but they add a good flavor to the mix. So,
celery, you get those celery in there, cabbage.
No, heck no. I don't
need to get him down to Louisiana, get him with the Trinity, get him loving vegetables again.
You don't eat celery?
Dude, I don't eat food that my food eats.
I do.
Carnivore. I am. I look at myself as the apex predator.
I love it.
Yeah, I don't eat all the rabbit food. I can't do it. Now I do like potatoes and corn and stuff like that, but none of that other fancy jargon. I'm not into that.
When you make a pot roast, stew or something, like you don't throw like a bunch of vegetables in there with it as it's cooking, slow roasting.
No, that just ruins it.
Okay. Hey, again, I don't give a damn what you think. I eat it.
That's right.
That's the way I enjoy it.
Hey, look, and that's the beautiful thing is everybody's different, and that's what people need to realize is everybody is different, and they can do whatever they want. So just
whatever you want in your stew.
Yeah, that's right. You can put anything in your stew. I don't care how you cook it. If you like it, that's wonderful.
There you go.
Right.
All right, let's take some listener questions here. Unless you had another fact to fight the myth.
No, I'm good.
Okay, those were good.
Yeah, I'll just say that's Ben's answer is a huge reason why I love watching him in his show, because I do feel like with a lot of these professional hunting shows, people have lost sight, right? And think it's just about the pursuit of the trophy. And if you don't take down the biggest buck in camp, that the season's a failure, or you're not a real hunter. I mean, any real hunter knows it's about, the field to table experience with your food, and the time you get to share with those in camp, and the stories you share. Those are the memories that live on a lot longer. And for me, the animals that I have mounted are not necessarily about their size. They're more about the memories that are tied to that animal and that experience.
And I'll just say this, that not every buck is genetically inclined to be a trophy or a Boone and Crockett buck. It's not. I'm not going to shoot Spike because I think, well, that's all he's ever going to be. Okay, but if he comes in and the neck is a full connected to the brisket area, it's a straight line. It doesn't look like a doe with antlers. It has a sway back and a pot belly. Okay, that's an older deer. You have a mature deer on your hands. It doesn't matter what size the antlers on that deer's head are. A mature deer is a mature deer, and you take that deer, you win. You have won.
Meat, it tastes the same.
Yep, you can't tell how old it is or how big the antlers are by the flavor in the crock pot.
Yep. I like that. All right, here's questions. Let's go first. Giddy up. This is a good question. What do you recommend for kids when they get started? My son just started wanting to go out and shoot, and I've only ever been into guns. So what do you recommend that youth start off with?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to archery, definitely, probably vertical space. There's a lot of good youth bows out there. I know we have some in the Centerpoint line. They're, going to help them get the foundations and the basics, get into it. It's things, the bows are only going to be fast enough that they could go, shoot them in the backyard. Even if you live in a suburban area, you don't have to worry about it. That would be probably where I would start, especially if we're talking, kids in that, 5 to 10 year age range, where it's just about getting them excited to be outdoors and getting them excited about shooting. You don't want to overpower them with, the complexity of, maybe a crossbow or a compound vertical bow.
What about you, Ben? Any tips, recommendations?
I would agree with everything Brandon said on that. I don't have any other advice. I mean, just seek a bow. And, well, I will say this. You can go to a local archery shop and have them shoot at an indoor range and try different bows to see what fits them the best. That is what I would do.
Yeah.
Like that.
It's no different than sports equipment, right? Most people don't start their kid out with the $500 baseball glove when he's getting into baseball. You start out with, the $30 glove, see if the kid likes it, help work on all the other parts of the game, and then let them progress and build better equipment as they get more passionate and get better at it.
Right.
Here's a question from Nicolai Aplanap. I wonder if he's related to Aura. It says, honest question, do mechanical broadheads still suck? Worst day of tracking a wounded deer ever?
I haven't personally had any issues in the past several years with mechanical broadheads. Now, before, I've seen, some stuff from like earlier on in their development. Yeah, I mean, they were still being developed, but now we have it figured out so well that it's almost, I'm not saying that 100% of the time everything's going to work perfect, because it's not. But for the most part, I have had zero failures on a mechanical broadhead. It's more so about shot placement.
Yep. Yeah, and like we said, the main thing is nowadays, if you want to guarantee, that those mechanicals, use the right mechanical that's rated for the bow you're using, for the velocity you're shooting, the grain weight, all those things come into play. So there's some research that you got to do to make sure you're pairing things up appropriately. But everything I've seen, as long as you're using the right equipment for your bow or what your bow is rated at, you should have no issues.
Could have been Nikolai he didn't have them paired up right, or maybe he had a bad shot too. He hit it in a bad spot.
Or maybe it could have been just 1 in 100 situation where it just didn't do right. You know, the broadhead itself failed. You know, there's always that option to think of as well.
Yeah.
He also asked you specifically, Ben, what is your favorite duck to eat and why is it wood duck?
I love sandhill crane and speckled belly geese. Those are my favorites of all time. Now wood duck, I love eating wood duck because they're plentiful around here. There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And growing up in Alabama, that's about all we ever shot. So, you know, but sandhill crane and the speckled belly goose are my favorites. Now, as far as the duck world goes, mallard and wood duck, teal, pretty good. I don't have one that I just said, except maybe a snow goose.
We need to have you back on. We'll talk about like recipes and stuff, how to cook.
Yes.
How to cook up different with duck and deer and all the game meat. We had Amy Hall on a couple of times for you listeners who are not new to us, but are new listeners. She's big into hunting, and she had me over one time to her house, and she had that sandhill crane fixed up, and man, that stuff was so good.
Oh yeah, ribeye.
Yeah, it was like eating a ribeye, man. It was so good.
Yes.
I need to introduce you to her, by the way, Ben.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Let's see. Austin Whalen, are there certain things to look for when buying a used bow? Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're buying it, you don't know the life, right? So you could start with some of the basic mechanical stuff like we talked about. Check the strings, check the serving on the strings, check the timing of the cams, make sure all that's good because that's ultimately going to affect function. And then also you need to look over the limbs. You need to look over the fore end, you know, the riser, the shaft, any of it. If you see any cracks or stress fractures, right, those are all things that could be big problems and cost you big money or cause you a safety concern down the road.
I agree with that 110%. Brandon, you hit the nail on the head with that one.
Very good. See, P-Man, what would be recommended for a good starter bow? And I can answer this. The 430X, I'm starter, first crossbow I ever shot. Had no problems with it whatsoever. So the 430X, the Wrath.
Yep.
But you may have some other things, Brandon, that you recommend. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's a great one to start with. I mean, we do have, if you're talking somebody who, you know, is looking for maybe a lower poundage or lower velocity because maybe they, you know, if their budget's a little bit lower, right? Like, let's be honest, you know, so you're kind of talking when the Wrath, you're in that $600 and up, but we've got bows in the space that if you're in that $300 to $500 budget, you're going to come with some less features. It's going to be a little bit slower. Most of those are going to be a manual rope cocking device. Anything in that space is going to be great. You know, it's the same thing like the kid in the baseball glove analogy. You know, start with what you feel comfortable, what's in your budget, and then as you get dedicated to it and proficient with it, up your tools.
There you go. I like that. But he's got money, so he could go ahead and just jump into the Raven. So there you go,
Oh,
Pete.
Yeah, get you the 500.
Spend some of that attorney money.
Yeah. Just shoot straight for the moon.
Yeah, that's right.
And P-Man, for our AK Corner listeners, he attended Kalash Bash on the Leadhead Brigade's behalf, and we're going to see if maybe we can't get him to fill us in on what happened at Kalash Bash. Next question, and you know we've mainly been talking bigger game with the bow hunting, but you know you can turkey hunt with bows in some places, rabbit, you know, smaller game hunt, and then you can also there's bow fishing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So, and we're probably talking different setups, but here's a question to get us into it. Flood munitions. What's the best setup to get into bow fishing? I shoot recurve and longbow and have thought about getting a reel setup on one of those, or should I go straight to a compound setup?
I started out with a recurve bow, and I'm still shooting a recurve bow to this day on bow fishing. I like it because it's quick. I don't have to do the full draw. I can short draw and shoot fast. Especially with the silver carp that jump, you have to be able to quick shoot those things. Now, I'm not saying a compound bow is inefficient or not the same capabilities, but if just from the way I see things is I see things as tools, and my cheap bow that I got from Academy, a local outdoor store, I just bought it because I knew I was going to tear it up. You know, I knew it was going to be in the bottom of my boat and have fish all over it. So I bought that I could easily replace and don't have to clean.
There you go.
That's
Takes
just
licking and keeps on ticking, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that probably goes into maybe what you know and what you're comfortable with is know your equipment, know what your capabilities are with that tool or that equipment, and then go from there. And if you've got the ability to set those up, you know, the compound or the longbow or the recurve, and you're comfortable with those, set them up for bow fishing.
Yes.
Try them both out. See which one you like best.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what, you know, I think Ben's spot on. You know, I love the, you know, traditional vertical archery space. And I do think that there's a lot of times where, you know, that is indicative of, you know, bow fishing, to his point. But I do know some people who, you know, they prefer, you know, a compound bow for bow fishing just because they like to be, you know, full draw, max power, and have that let off, right? You know, some people can't hold, you know, a traditional recurve at full draw for long amounts of time because you don't have the let off that you have with the compound.
Right.
So, you know, again, maybe, you know, if you're somebody who has, you know, a physical handicap or physical limitations and you want to get out there and be at full draw, but you can't, you know, hold a recurve back all that time, I think the compound is a great option. Or if you're wanting, you know, more velocity, whatever, you know, right, just upgrade your tools. Yeah. We've got our Centerpoint Typhon, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to come down. We're going to go bow fishing with Ben, and we're going to get him using a Typhon compound to go bow fishing.
Don't you tempt me with a good time. My boat is ready, and the fish
better have room for me because I'm coming.
Yeah,
that's right.
You just drive over to my house. We'll ride together to the lodge.
Hell yeah.
We're doing it, man. We're doing it.
Let's do it. I didn't know y'all had a bow fishing thing. Man, we bow fish every afternoon when we're in the man, the big heads, the silver carp are everywhere.
Nice. Well, there you go. We got it lined up. There's
you heard it here.
Bow fishing podcast. It's coming. Yeah.
Coming to you first live action in Cairo, Mound City, Illinois at the Sarnia Bottom Boys Lodge Outfitters. That's where we'll be doing that. The fish are beautiful.
Nice.
I'm down. All right, next question. Brett Badal, what are some of your recommendations for sighting systems? Pin and peep still the best option, or mini red dot? Not sure if this is even an option yet.
As far as vertical bow, I would definitely say pin and peep. But and Brandon, you can touch more on this, but I feel like we talked about it before with the crossbow. You know, we just need to look at the scope that comes from the factory with that bow or something equivalent to what is there.
Yeah. I mean, that's spot on. I mean, I think pin and peep when it comes to vertical bow space is great. You know, when it comes to, you know, recurve, there's no sight system I use on my recurve. It's just point and shoot and learning how to aim properly. Crossbows, I would recommend going with the optic that comes with your bow, unless somehow that optic gets damaged.
Okay, good points. All right, let's. I know you guys got to go, so let's wrap this up. We want to reward our listeners, and I've got some Seal 1. Maybe I can get the Bow Pro, to give away. So what was your favorite question out of all those, Ben?
The duck. The duck was my favorite. Somebody already knew that I was a duck man.
There you go. So Nikolai Aplanap, you're going to win the Seal 1. Let me know if you want the Seal 1 or you want the Bow Pro, and we'll make sure that we get that sent to you. Email me, all the winners, whoever we announce today, talkinglead@gmail.com. Let me know what you won, and we'll obviously need your address and throwing a shirt size there too, just in case. So Nikolai, you get the Seal 1 reward. Brandon, I think you're going to put some stuff up from Velocity, aren't you?
Yeah, we had and I think we might have glazed by it on the Instagram there, but we got a nice Centerpoint hoodie and the Centerpoint hat and multicam. So we're gonna throw one of those out to. Do you want me to go with my favorite question, or how do you want to do that?
Yeah. Let's just your favorite question. Let's reward them with a hat and hoodie.
Well, I like the bow fishing question because now we're going bow fishing with Ben Cole because of it. And so I'm going to help that guy out, and that dude gets a hoodie and a hat.
Yes.
Like Flood Munitions, you win the hat and the hoodie. Obviously, we'll need your size for that hoodie, so send that. It's just snapback hat. Is that what it is? So he don't need a.
Yeah, it's snapback trucker,
Sweet.
Multicam, sharp little hat.
Love it. So Flood Munitions, email me, tell me what you won, and we need your address. And then you're going to get 2 of those away, did you say, or 1?
Oh, yeah, we can do 2.
Okay.
You want to pick your favorite question?
I will pick my favorite question. And my favorite question is going to be the starter question from P-Man. What would be recommended for a good starter? Since I'm a starter, I'm just getting into this. I don't think I was overcomplicated with this setup with the 430X. I think everything was simple, straightforward. Not overly complicated. I haven't really got proficient with the crank system yet that I'm fondling over here in the video. Just because it's quicker for me to use the string to get more shots on target. But I do see the benefit of that crank system maybe being in a stand where I don't have as much room to cock it with the string. But so P-Man, you win a hat and hoodie. So there we go. There's our winners.
Awesome.
For today, appreciate everybody taking the time to get their questions in. Sorry for the late post. I know I didn't even give you 24 hours this time for the post. Sorry, Leadheads. We'll try to do better next time, but we do appreciate everyone who did see and did comment. Did you guys share it on your sites anywhere?
I did. Shared it to my Instagram.
I'm going to share it out on mine for sure. So.
Okay. Well, I meant, did you have any questions that we needed to field from if you reposted my post?
No. I haven't any yet.
Okay. All right. Well, if we didn't get your question or you're listening to this after we recorded and you wanted something answered, email me, talkinglead@gmail.com. I'll put you in touch with one of these awesome experts, Brandon or Benjamin, and they'll answer your questions. And maybe we can get a whole new segment going, just an archery segment. Kind of like we're doing the AK corner. Maybe we'll do an archery corner or something like that.
Sure.
And do like once a month or something like that. I think that would be awesome if we could put something like that together. But Brandon, appreciate you and everything that you've done to make this possible. You and Centerpoint, the gang at Centerpoint and Velocity Outdoors. Wish Dave could have joined us. Too bad. He must have a good time.
We'll do another episode and get him on, and we can talk some Raven maybe.
Yeah, we'll talk some Raven. I'll get a little more experience with this. And then hopefully, maybe I'll get a compound bow and start getting proficient on those as well. And we expand my vocabulary anyway. And maybe I can come down and Ben can teach me how to properly how to use the crossbow too. But Ben, really appreciate you being on too, brother. Did we lose him?
I might be out. Not sure. It
May
went
have
blank on my side.
Yeah, he blank on mine too. Maybe he's out there in that lodge. So
That's it. Yeah.
out in Tennessee. But we definitely will have Ben back on. Really enjoyed having him. I wanted to do the new guy questions with him, but maybe we'll do that next time. But hope you Leadheads enjoyed this. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. There, he's back now.
Yeah, I'm back.
There you are. So before we sign, I want to say thank you. Appreciate you being on. We want to have you on again sometime. And I wanted to find out more about you, but we're running out of time. So we'll definitely have you back on, Ben, like the regular show. And we'll find out more about the TV show and, everything that you've got going on. So
Yeah.
Give everybody where they can get in touch with you real quick.
Yep.
And Brandon, before you go, I want you to give out your stuff too. But Ben, go ahead.
Yeah. So the best way to get in touch with me is Benjamin the Duck Hunter on Instagram, or Rooted Television, which is rooted_television. That is going to be the absolute best way to get in touch with me. Also, you can email me at ben@rootedtelevision.com. Those are the best forms of communication.
Very cool. Very cool. And Brandon, for Velocity, I know you guys have a wide variety of stuff, and we're gonna talk about air guns and all kinds of stuff with you guys. Give out your Centerpoint info and Raven.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody needed to contact me or had some questions, feel free. It's just Forquer@velocity-outdoor.com.
It's that simple. And then you guys have the Instagrams, your own Instagrams.
Yep.
And you can do all that too. So there you go, Leadheads. That does it for another episode of the Talking Lead podcast. Hope you guys got as much out of it as I did. And again, if you've got questions or anything to follow up with, talkinglead@gmail.com. We'll make sure we get those. And go support all our sponsors: Mission First Tactical, SEAL 1, 1776 United, Factory 47, Defiant Munitions, IWIUS, Century Arms, Keltec. Use those discount codes because that's how they know that you're hearing about them on the show, and saving you money on all your favorite products there. And then, of course, maybe we'll get something set up with Centerpoint, maybe where we can I don't know. You guys don't have a online store, though, do you? You just do all retail?
Yeah, we do. We have stuff, so.
Okay, maybe we'll get a discount code set up with them, too, so you guys can go get some of their cool stuff, too. But until then, Leadheads, as always, keep your loved ones close.
And keep your weapons closer.
Especially if it's a crossbow, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And keep Rooted Television and Genesis 27:3-4 even closer.
Oh, that's perfect, man. I like that.
Thank you.
Good deal. What'd you think? Good show?
I loved it. It was